What's up, everyone? Don't forget to leave your feedback and enjoy the story. The narrative opens with a young knight, drenched in blood, trying to regain his breath while grinning on a battlefield. Suddenly, it appears that the conflict is far from done, as a number of death beams are hurled at him and his soldiers. In the midst of the blasts, the hero stands erect, proud that they have come this far, but they have more work to do. They can win the war if they can simply defeat this final force in front of them. Unfortunately, a strong red beam of energy shoots straight through him while he's thinking about it. Before he even realizes it, this laser of death passes through him. His bloodshot eyes slowly glance down, revealing a huge hole in the center of his trunk. He looks incredulously at the enormous hole in his chest, as it quickly burns away and then suddenly drops to his knees. He at last accepts what has happened, and the truth hits him at that precise time. Unfortunately, there is no way to recover from this deadly blow. Thus, like his fellows, whose bodies are now strewn across the battlefield, the hero collapses on his face and gives himself up to death. He knows that his story will conclude with him powerless to do anything as he lies in a massive pool of his own blood in his last moments. He gets even more exhausted just thinking about it, and because there is nothing he can do at this point, he just sits there and lets his life pass by. How, therefore, did this bright young fighter find himself in this dire circumstance? It all began one day when a continent was destroyed by an unidentified menace that unexpectedly entered their universe. The Liquidator, the arch-enemy of humanity, was the name given to the person who caused this disaster. To defend humanity, a band of warriors was formed after this celestial planet Ender went on a rampage. One member of this group of heroes, Brian Miller, earned the nickname World Protecting Shield, as he survived a massive meteorite without getting any injuries. The second member of this guardian team was a renowned sage named Bella Albright, the Great Sage, who was reputed to have power equivalent to an entire division. Jacob Bloomfield, the divine archer who defeated a Heil dragon in one shot, was also a member of the team. However, they were not the only heroes who came together to defend the planet. Among them was the greatest swordsman in history. Because of her might, she was referred to as the Sword Saint. Her name was Amy White. It is clear from what we know about these warriors that they were regarded as humanity's best chance. However, our protagonists are part of a different organization called the Support Unit, thus they weren't the only ones battling the Liquidator. Unfortunately, they were only sacrificial pawns and, as you might imagine, were placed in the second team because they had any truly noteworthy qualities. Gray Lee, the main character, is a typical foot soldier who quickly bleeds out in the center of the debris. Yet in his final moments, all he can think about is how the superhuman defenders of humanity are really on a different level. As they continue to fight the Liquidator, he looks on in wonder. Even before this, Gray Lee was aware of how outstanding the World Union Academy graduates were, but he had no idea how much he would stand out from the elite troops. Apparently, it is because he is lying in the dirt with some organs missing from his chest, and the four of them are still fighting. He questions whether the presence or absence of the support unit even matters in this case. He is even more infuriated by the fact that the group of heroes seems to be thriving without them. Gray Lee grits his teeth in frustration as he remembers how he and his colleagues put in a lot of training only to become collateral damage. Though the thoughts fill his mind, tears stream down his face, yet at this point, there is nothing he can do. As the heroes keep attacking, Amy White launches a barrage of blows that eventually cause Liquidator some harm. The Celestial Force doesn't take it well and is genuinely shocked that they are able to harm him. He decides it's time to quit playing with them, and with that in mind, he uses his wings to make 2 energy balls and releases 2 destructive energy bursts that completely destroy the heroes. In the blink of an eye, the Guardians are murdered by the Liquidator's overpowering blast, and Gray's eyes enlarge in shock and astonishment at this. He just saw humanity's archenemy destroy the Earth's defenders with a single blow. Therefore, it's difficult to process. Even worse, according to the Liquidator, he had been tinkering up until recently. The protagonist is therefore certain that they have no chance whatsoever of winning this conflict at that precise moment. Since this overpowered angel of death destroyed a whole continent in his first appearance on Earth, it should have been very clear. In any case, the MC is still crying while he waits to die. However, he suddenly comes to the realization that he shouldn't even be alive at this moment. For some reason, he is still alive even though his heart was pierced a long time ago. He then hears the voice as he glances down at his image in the blood. After declaring that he has at last located him, the voice commands Gray to emerge and use his immense power. The MC suddenly finds himself standing in the middle of an unfamiliar location and starts to question what's happening. Though everything seems a little empty, He believes that this might be the afterlife. If so, after glancing around a little, the wide-eyed soldier notices a strange hooded creature seated cross-legged on what looks to be a throne. Gray asks the celestial being who he is as he looks over at him. Thus, the extraterrestrial form only reassures him that he is still alive. Since he could clearly see the deadly wound in his chest, the entity tells him that the physical wounds on his body have already healed, which seems incredibly implausible. In any case, he asks the extraterrestrial if he did the healing, but the large person denies any responsibility. Rather, he tells Gray that he was able to heal himself. The foot soldier must not understand any of this, and this celestial being is regretfully unable to provide him with an explanation either. This extraterrestrial, it seems, is also incapable of accurately assessing Gray's actual power. Nonetheless, he can undoubtedly inform the MC that, provided he can effectively manage it, his authority surpasses that of the liquidator. If I were him at this moment, I would begin searching for any hidden cameras around, because it all sounds like a big joke, but I'm not the MC. Does this mean that they have a chance to win this war? Gray asks the hooded creature. Unfortunately, the alien acknowledges that he has no idea how to answer that question, and that he wouldn't hold out much hope either. But he also feels that they should work together to get rid of the liquidator. The black alien smashes another hole through Gray's body as soon as he says this, giving him no time to digest it. He then promises to give the MC the power he has to assist him, telling Gray that he can now depart. We now witness the magic. Circle in front of Gray's chest with a vividly lighted clock. Thus, it's very obvious that our boy recently received a significant power boost. He immediately gets back on his feet after waking up on the battlefield, following his experience with the odd extraterrestrial. When Gray picks up his sword, he is startled to discover that a mysterious power has fully encircled it. He wonders what it is that makes the blade crackle with lightning-like energy, and the voice tells him it's his own power coming to life. Regarding the alien's strength, it is invisible to the human eye. He then tells Gray about this. Because he actually recently avoided death, our boy is thrilled with this new ability. He also chooses to use his new skills on the merciless angel of death, because the liquidator is still alive. Gray is already on him as the malevolent alien turns around after abruptly sensing something approaching him. With a vicious slice of his threatening sword, our youngster charges, and the liquidator nearly looks appalled by his appearance. Since he didn't believe there were any strong opponents left, the evil alien is shocked by what is happening. He is aware of Gray's peril since he senses our boy's might. When the hero hits, this is verified. That causes some serious harm, and this greatly increases his self-confidence. Because he believes he is stronger than the liquidator, he charges in for another swing and even begins to get arrogant. But Gray is soon reminded by the World Ender why he should not be taken lightly. The liquidator splits Gray in two with a single slash, much as he did with the Guardians of Earth earlier. He doesn't even see it at first because it happens so quickly, and when our youngster glances down, he is appalled to realize that his legs are no longer attached to his torso. In addition to giving him this fatal blow, the liquidator praises Gray for forcing him to throw everything he has. The liquidator apparently believes that he can kill the MC by slicing him in half, so he turns around and gets ready to take off. Then, in a startling turn of events, the same energy that had previously consumed the blade spills out and grows, enveloping Gray's whole body and allowing him to recover in an instant. After that, the sword grows so enormous that even the liquidator is confused by it. The malevolent extraterrestrial is already aware that Gray will deliver a crushing strike. Since he is no longer certain that this adversary is human, with a deadly gleam in his eyes, our lad takes a horrifying swing at the liquidator after becoming merged with the energy like a host and a symbiote. The alien uses his barrier to deflect this attack, but Gray quickly overwhelms him and destroys it with a mind-bending energy beam. Even though the liquidator has no expression on his face, you can tell that he is beginning to grow quite frightened of our youngster after the blast sends him flying. As the conflict takes a sharp turn, Gray Lee throws another haymaker and confesses that despite his fierce blow, he no longer believes he is human. He discovers that the liquidator is still actively involved in the conflict after the dust has settled. This baffles him, and he doesn't even understand how the extraterrestrial survived such a blow. He acknowledges that the liquidator's strength is genuinely extraordinary as a result. The two superpowers are now squarely facing one another, and humanity's arch-enemy is still attempting to overtake him. Although he is still fighting, he is unsure on how to attack after witnessing Gray's skill. However, Earth's newest hero is feeling rather certain that he can prevail. Thus, he promises to crush the liquidator repeatedly till he dies while staring at him with his alien eyes. The expression in his eyes makes it clear that he isn't even playing a game. He then uses his powerful sword to deliver another fatal cut immediately after facing the World Destroyer. Despite his best efforts to avoid it, the Liquidator is struck hard and even bleeds this time. He moans in pain and calls 𝗏𝗏𝐿 a monster, but despite his current suffering, he is determined to fight this human hero head-on and once more vows to quit playing around. The Liquidator uses his hidden weapon and heals himself. He glows much brighter than before as several sets of wings emerge from his back. Additionally, the alien informs the hero that his time is up by mysteriously making the entire world dark. 𝗏 is shocked to realize that the man has changed day into darkness when he glances up. It appears as though the roles will soon be reversed, as the world ender keeps using his deadly attack. To put an end to the battle permanently, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 charges at the adversary once more with his enormous sword, unfazed by the Liquidator's small magic trick. Remarkably, even though he puts a lot of energy into his sword, he is unable to cut through the alien's shield this time. He is momentarily taken aback when his attack just bounces off the barrier. He is still attempting to make sense of what is happening. After the Liquidator explains it to him, the world ender informs him that nothing can hurt him on this level of actual nightfall. Thus, all of his attacks are pointless. The Liquidator feels unstoppable at this moment. Casually, he tells our youngster to look at the stars and put an end to his pointless opposition. When our youngster hears this, he looks up at the sky in dread, and while he stares at the dazzling light there, his pupils keep dilation. 𝗏 is merely altered, since he is aware that the dazzling light isn't merely for show, but the alien still praises it for its beauty. He is really struck by the mighty ray of death, and a devastating explosion ensues. Right away, the massive crater in the earth is visible as the smoke and dust gradually dissipate after the explosion. You would imagine an asteroid would have smashed in that crater because it is so large. When the alien sees this, he is certain that the human warrior has already been crushed to dust and will not be able to resurrect himself this time. However, he soon came to the realization that this was not the case. Suddenly, lightning strikes begin to flash across the crater. The Liquidator becomes confused as the energy quickly accumulates. Once again, as he watches the ball of energy grow larger, a mystical shield that resembles a clock appears directly in front of the extraterrestrial. When the Liquidator sees this, it identifies it immediately. The same voice that had before called out to 𝗏𝗏𝐿 then raises its voice. The voice expresses admiration for the Liquidator's immense strength and implies that it should be sufficient to reclaim him. At this moment, the alien invader feels a surge of fear since this is the voice of Kronos. The black celestial creature summons 𝗏𝗏𝐿 since the Liquidator doesn't believe it. He summons the super-powerful hero who chooses to use all of his might to transport our youngster back in time. Naturally, the Liquidator is incensed upon learning of this, since he is aware that it is all a part of Kronos' grand scheme to bring him down. Naturally, it doesn't accomplish anything when he curses at the black alien for saving 𝗏𝗏𝐿. Then, stating that this is all he can do for the human hero, Kronos keeps his word and turns back time. In a sense, Kronos gives 𝗏𝗏𝐿 the key to the human realm by sending him back in time. After then, everything fades out and turns white. In the middle of a field, our hero unexpectedly awakens. He looks about, wondering where he is, as soon as he opens his eyes. When he finally sees the little village far away, down the hill, he is even more shocked to learn that it is Renado village, his hometown. This is quite confusing to 𝗏𝗏𝐿 because it doesn't make sense. He knows it shouldn't be here because his community was destroyed 15 years ago when he last looked. However, in his bewilderment, he remembers what Kronos told him on the battlefield. He recalls that he was promised a trip back in time by the dark alien god. After completing the riddle, 𝗏𝗏𝐿 comes to the conclusion that he is truly in the past. He is abruptly distracted from his thoughts by a searing sting on his hand. He instantly recalls this injury when he looks at his bandaged forearm. The injury dates back to the period when 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and a few other bullies were picking on him. When 𝗏𝗏𝗏 thinks of those bullies, he begins to shake with anxiety. He's not prepared to experience that again because he recalls how severely they beat him up. He fears that he won't be able to defeat them since, regrettably, he also recalls how strong they were. Our boy is so traumatized by his bullies that he suffers panic attacks at the mere thought. After closing his eyes, he finally relaxes. He seems to have never even left the village, based on the evidence. He therefore comes to the conclusion that beating the Liquidator was most likely a pipe dream. He returns to the village after accepting his fate in light of this. He chooses to devise a strategy for the bullies when he feels more resilient, since he doesn't want to be harmed by them. Regretfully, he encounters the same bullies in the bushwalk on his way home. He just looks at them blankly because he can't believe how horrible his luck has been. At last, 𝗲𝗀𝗇, the gang's leader, is presented to us. He laments that 𝗲𝗲 forced him to go to a lot of difficulty in order to find our boy, claiming that they have been actively searching for him. The main character is probably wishing he could just teleport or vanish at this time, but regrettably, it isn't possible. 𝗲𝗲 is instructed to pick up a blade that 𝗲𝗀𝗇 abruptly throws at his feet. As he tries to comprehend what's actually going on here, our youngster is still in a daze. He tells the MC straight out that he wants to have a simulated fight after 𝗲𝗀𝗇 cautions him not to act foolish, but 𝗲𝗲 still doesn't pick up the sword. He graciously declines the invitation instead, stating that his injury hasn't completely healed. After thanking the bullies for the invitation, he informs them that he will not be joining them until his injuries have healed. These thugs aren't the type to accept rejection, of course. 𝗲𝗀𝗇 insists that they have the mock battle, assuring him that it's safe. They begin to approach him like a pack of wolves circling wounded prey since the blade is blunt, but 𝗲𝗲 won't pick up the sword. He maintains that even if a blade is dull, it is still a large piece of iron and can still be quite harmful. However, 𝗲𝗀𝗇 eventually loses patience. The bully loses patience and urges 𝗲𝗲 to stop talking, saying that he has no right to refuse him. After explaining this to our son, he tells him that if he doesn't like swords, he can fight without one. 𝗲𝗀𝗇 throws his blade at 𝗲𝗲 before he can even comprehend this, which actually confounds him because the man doesn't even mind attacking him when he is defenseless. How in the world did this turn out to be a fictitious battle? The fact that there is no escaping this is now very obvious. Thus 𝗲𝗲 determines that it's time to focus on the game. A veteran military doctor gave him some advice before he was sent back. It turns out that a childhood injury was the cause of 𝗲𝗲's unwillingness to enhance his swordsmanship. Now when he thinks about it, the MC sees that this may have been the beginning of his life as a loser. Like a fugitive train, 𝗲𝗀𝗇 charges toward him, and our lad reflexively avoids the blow moments before it lands. He's even surprised that he avoided being hit, and he starts to question whether 𝗲𝗀𝗇's blows were always this slow. 𝗲𝗀𝗇, furious at the initial miss, attempts another swing, but 𝗲𝗲 avoids it once more. Our youngster finally understands that 𝗲𝗀𝗇 isn't sluggish after he avoids being hit for the third consecutive time. The bully also starts getting frustrated by the fact that he can't even land a single hit. So in frustration, he slurs at 𝗲𝗲. Unfortunately, he just misses again, so his rage isn't even helping him right now. Our youngster then understands that he is the one who has improved in speed. When the other bullies witness the man's speed, they are astounded. Suddenly, he seems like a totally different person now. Thus, they all look on in awe as he makes 𝗲𝗀𝗇 look foolish. Our lad ultimately chooses to pick up the sword after avoiding everything the guy hurled at him. Even though he no longer has his former body, he still possesses the memories of the conflicts he has faced. 𝗲𝗀𝗇 seizes the opportunity to leap at 𝗲𝗲 from behind as he stoops to pick up the blade. Unfortunately for him, 𝗲𝗲 uses just one swipe of his own sword to effortlessly deflect him. With the strike, he knocks the bully flying, and he's even shocked that his powerful bully was knocked off his feet by a single nonchalant strike. Since the man is currently beginning to resemble an amateur, he is beginning to believe that a fight would not be fair. However, he recalls all of the things 𝗲𝗀𝗇's group did to him. He concludes that the ringleader is not even deserving of his sympathy. After all, because he was unable to defend himself, he was tortured by these same bits of garbage. Fortunately, that is no longer the case. He is therefore delighted to show off his new abilities. After watching how easily the blade left his hand, he disarms 𝗲𝗀𝗇 with another fluid swing, realizing that the bully is truly worse than an amateur. 𝗲𝗀𝗇 hasn't been taught how to take a sword blow, according to 𝗲𝗲. This is irrelevant, however. After all, he learned from these bullies that as long as the blade is dulled, it is quite fine to beat someone with a sword. Despite our boy's powerful blows with a so-called dull blade, 𝗲𝗀𝗇's body is nevertheless sliced open. The man's face is splashed with blood from his shoulder, and his eyes enlarge in horror. In addition to his complete incredulity, he is in such excruciating pain that he is compelled to his knees. 𝗲𝗲 immediately pauses in amazement, exactly as astonished by what has just transpired as 𝗲𝗀𝗇, who yells in agony. He doesn't understand how the blade cut the troublemaker when it was meant to be dulled. In his bewilderment, he confirms that the blade is really blunt by taking another look at it. Therefore, 𝗲𝗲 understands that if he had truly given 𝗲𝗀𝗇 a sharp blade, he could have even killed him with that slash. Knowing that he may have killed these children causes our boy to briefly panic. However, they're also the same methods who ruined his village life. He chooses to use the blade's flat surface to beat 𝗲𝗀𝗇 instead. He can maintain the sword's bluntness in this way. He uses it to walk the bully in the face while exacting his retribution, knocking him to the ground once more. Now that 𝗪𝗲 is scared, our boy watches him and wonders why he is screaming so loudly. He reminds the gang leader that he is the one who stated that the blunt sword is safe and asks him what is wrong. 𝗪𝗲 just covers his bleeding nose and sits there now. The frightened bully looks to the side and notices his thugs simply standing there as Gray approaches him cautiously. Thus, he lashes out at them and commands them to assault our boy. 𝗪𝗲's belief that his minions can defeat Gray after the same man simply mopped the floor with him is hilarious. Given how suddenly strong he has become, they are hesitant to approach. After what he just did to their commander, he's shocked that they're stupid enough to challenge him again, but he can't help but beat them up as well. MC becomes enraged as 𝗪𝗲 angrily instructs them to kill our child, who has been attacked from the beginning. He was going to overlook their misconduct this time, but he chooses to show them what he can do, because it's obvious that they all want to try his new abilities. 𝗪𝗲 and his thugs are on their knees with swollen faces a few moments later. As you look at them, you can see that they have been beaten so severely that steam is escaping from their bodies. Now, since he's been so afraid of these same men, Gray is perplexed. He recalls that these men are from the swordsmanship dojo in Syria. He inquires as to if such is the case, and 𝗪𝗲 responds that he is somewhat right. They haven't been going to the dojo lately, apparently because they felt they were strong enough. When he hears them say this, Gray finds it somewhat perplexing, because he finds it hard to accept that their current level is sufficient. Considering the type of students the dojo produces, he concludes that he shouldn't have high expectations for the dojo itself. He still thinks it could help him, though, so he asks them to tell him about the dojo they go to. He would like to be invited after learning that it is only by referral. 𝗪𝗲, for some reason, is not very eager to bring Gray in because he fears that he will be too ashamed to inform his master that he lost a sword fight. He advises our boy to invite someone else, but he isn't in the mood to be turned down. 𝗪𝗲 chooses to continue their fictitious altercation since he refuses to cooperate. Before he had a chance to speak, the bully then consents to introduce Gray and leaves his friends behind as he rushes toward the dojo. 𝗪𝗲 eventually asks Gray why he truly wants to visit the dojo after they have all returned to the hamlet. When our boy inquires about it, the builder acknowledges that he has also heard that this particular dojo offers a recommendation spot for the academy. Our youngster clarifies that this is the reason he wishes to go by this name. 𝗪𝗲's friend believes he is powerful enough without attending the academy. Unfortunately, Gray is aware that he cannot overcome the Liquidator in his current state. The World Ender was too strong for even the best lineup in the world. He recalls the fight in which the Liquidator destroyed every Guardian with a single blast. When the alien became serious, Gray remembers that even with the power Kronos mentioned, he was unable to even scratch him. Since he has no idea how strong he needs to be to defeat the Liquidator, the very thought of it makes him extremely nervous. Although he finds it quite annoying, it's not as though he is clueless. Even if it was only briefly, he recalls having control over the evil force. At that point, he concentrated on the swordsmanship that the Sword Saint had taught him. Gray thinks that if he had trained under the same circumstances as the Sword Saint for a longer period of time, his encounter with the Liquidator could have turned out differently. The hero understands that Kronos must have sent him back in time for this reason. Before Gray finally meets the dojo master, she punishes 𝗪𝗲 and the others for trying to pick on a civilian using the techniques she taught them and getting their asses whooped tatter. This is Syria, who teaches swordsmanship dojo, and she is currently quite dissatisfied with her students. 𝗪𝗲 tries to explain that it was a fictitious fight and that they weren't making fun of Gray, but she silences him right once by swinging her sword once across the room. At this time, the others begin to shake, and Syria keeps berating him for his justifications. Ultimately, what she just did to him can be considered a mock fight, just as beating up an unarmed person is. Suddenly, 𝗪𝗲 and his group are permanently expelled from Syria's dojo. Naturally, they simply flee for their life, rather than even protesting, because doing so will make their situation worse. Gray tells Siri that she doesn't have to worry about the difficulty her previous students caused him when she sends them away, and she thanks him for allowing it. It slides. After clearing everything out, she asks directly if he would like to be recommended to the academy. When he confirms this, she clarifies that she cannot do so until she has verified his talents. Gray prepares for the test since he fully comprehends this. Syria urges him to approach him whenever he's ready and informs him that he's free to initiate contact. As expected, the hero surprises the dojo master by charging at her with multiple strong slashes. He seems to have fought innumerable wars, and she can tell that his swordsmanship is very realistic for his age. Syria tries to block a follow-up strike based on his movement, but 𝗏 simply slips under and enters from the side with lightning speed, proving to her that 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and the others are no match for him. She believes that 𝗏's approach is primarily self-taught, although she does catch a peek of academy-taught swordplay in between each move. She therefore questions whether he was taught there. She is certain of the fact that he is a talented diamond in the rough. Sarah concludes that it's time to conclude after a brief but fierce defense. She rushes at him with the hopes of easily overwhelming him, but he deflects her blow, shocking her. She thought he would eventually falter, so she finds it odd that he was able to respond to her in that way. Sadly for her, 𝗏 is matching her every move, so that isn't the case. She merely wanted to give his abilities a try, but now she's having to deal with everything. Her situation is even worse. She becomes aware of how terrified she is of this child at the moment. He suddenly has a frightening gleam in his eyes, and Sarah is feeling so overwhelmed that she is unsure of how to react. For a brief while, 𝗏 summons that evil energy, enabling him to drive the dojo master back for the first time. Sarah, meantime, is unyielding. She can no longer see the gloomy feeling she thought she had just now. She therefore comes to the conclusion that the child only scared her by taking an extremely violent swing. She enters for another round to put a permanent end to the sparring session with this newfound confidence. She is startled to discover that her sword has been slashed just as she is ready to land a blow. Sarah looks horrified and incredulous at the splintered sword. Even our lad is in shock over what has transpired, and the other half is lying on the opposite side of the dojo. He is astonished, since he didn't believe he had that ability. What he just experienced is the same feeling he had on the battlefield back then, when he could feel the black energy flowing through him. Even now, as he continues to struggle with it, she senses the evil force overpowering him. He collapses to his knees, as if he had just suffered a heart attack since the sting is suddenly so excruciating. Sarah begins to worry about him as well. She asks him, "Are you okay?" With a worried expression on her face, but he is still battling for his life and is unable to respond. He is currently attempting to recover, because it appears that his body was unable to keep up with the evil power he just used. The discomfort goes away after a short while, and he is able to stand again. He assures her that everything is fine. A few moments before, he was scarcely able to stand. He therefore learns from that experience that he shouldn't utilize this power irresponsibly. 𝗏, who is unfamiliar with this circumstance, questions if it would be wise to disclose his power to Sarah. Even if he told her, she probably wouldn't believe him, so he decides it's best not to bother, after noticing the perplexed and critical expression on her face. Furthermore, it's not as though he has the authority to support his claims. Thus, there's no use in informing her. In light of this, he makes us chuckle nervously and says he simply lost it, leaving the dojo instructor stunned and perplexed. She's still struggling to comprehend how this child was able to cut her with a dull wooden sword. Logically, that isn't feasible. And she doesn't even believe he understands the true significance of it. He asks anxiously if something is wrong, as he senses that Sarah is staring at him suspiciously. She lets it go and shifts the conversation back to the wooden sword he slashed in two with a single blow, since she can tell he's hiding something. The recommendation from the academy he requested. 𝗏 reiterates this, saying he has heard she might give him one. Sarah acknowledges that she does have the ability to recommend him to the Royal Academy of Swordsmanship, the best school in the kingdom. She informs him, though, that she is unable to suggest that he visit. The next thing she says to our son is like a strike below the belt. He's not suited for that place. As soon as she says this, 𝗏 begins to criticize himself, remembering that he always knew he wasn't strong enough, but that he was essentially unable to stop her, except in that final instant. He is therefore not shocked that she isn't sufficiently impressed. When she finishes telling him that the World Union Academy is the place he should aim for, he is still feeling sorry for himself. When he hears this twist, his eyes nearly jump out of their sockets. Sarah apparently doesn't want him to attend the best university in the kingdom because she thinks he should go the best university in the world. The mere thought of that location fills our youngster with awe, as it is the same establishment from whence the Sword Saint and the other heroes originated. Sarah reassures him that it's not impossible for someone like him to be accepted there, something he never thought was even possible, but it will be a stretch at this point because his body is not nearly fit enough to be a swordsman. Within the Royal Academy, she believes he can handle it with his abilities, but the World Union Academy won't accept it. She finds the young man in front of her quite confusing, since she doesn't understand how someone with a weak body like his could have such talents. 𝗏 is aware of her correctness. They're all real monsters from that academy. He therefore has little chance of competing with them given his physique. Syria can tell by the expression on his face that he is already feeling defeated, even though she cannot hear what he is thinking. Since the admission exam is still 9 months away, she asks him why he is quitting up. Although he believes he has a chance, he feels that 9 months is insufficient. The dojo instructor concurs with him as well. She urges him to trust her even though it's not enough. Syria obviously wants to have him as a pupil for the next 9 months, but she must also determine whether he is prepared to endure so much hardship. He knows that he must endure suffering even if he obviously doesn't want to. After all, nobody does. Thus, he decides to beg Syria to house him for the next 9 months. This is an excellent response, according to the dojo instructor, who is thrilled to hear him say it. However, the joyful expression is soon replaced with a menacing smile that makes Gray feel afraid, and she makes the decision that it's time to start as hell. Syria gives our boy a lot of proteins after he has pushed his physical limits during his rigorous training, which starts on the first day. She forces him to eat whether he wants to and trains him even when he doesn't feel like it. From the first day he entered the dojo, this became his life. 8 months later, Greyleaf's physical appearance underwent a total change. With prominent deltoids and chiseled abs on his arms and chest, all of his muscles are now fully defined. Syria is happy to report that he has gained a lot of muscle as a result of his 8 months of suffering. She urges him to go out there with confidence because he's so ripped now that she doesn't even think she has anything else to teach him. Although Gray is happy to hear that she is proud of him and their accomplishments, he finds it incomprehensible that she is sending him out at this time when the test is still a month away. She tells him that it can be challenging to take an exam in an area he is unfamiliar with, which is why she believes it is best to arrive early. She tosses him a bag of coins, saying that's enough for a month's meals and the trip's expenses, while he's still trying to comprehend it. Since it is a month before the test, Gray is hesitant to accept the money from her. When he says this, she just laughs, believing he's overanalyzing it. It's almost like she's attempting to eject him from the town. Our child knows that there aren't many guards in the settlement, and hears stories about an ogre's nest that was discovered close by. Syria now hesitantly acknowledges that she was also aware of such. However, she reassures him that it is unrelated to them. She makes an effort to persuade him, but he simply does not believe her. The dojo instructor believes they have nothing to worry about because assistance would be sent to them shortly from the royal capital. Having said that, she advises Gray to go to the test with no concerns. Even after she says all of this, our boy doesn't trust her and continues to stare at her with a blank expression. Because he has looked into the future, he already knows that this village will never receive assistance. He has actually experienced it. Gray is aware that just before the community is destroyed, his master will die. They apparently claimed that she was killed when she attempted to murder the ogre on her own, because he is aware of how things will turn out if he does nothing. He informs her that he will be departing, even though he has no plans to do so. Syria is happy to hear this and hopes he does well on his test. Later that evening, Syria sneaks away into the forest after persuading her student to abandon the community. From the skeleton remains covered with blood that were strewn around. You can see that there are some nasty monsters in this dangerous area. As our youngster foresaw, the dojo master has clearly arrived to pursue the ogre. She only needs to follow the trail of blood on the ground to locate the nest, which is located right over here, according to the scout's report. She's about to begin approaching when she hears a voice asking her where she's headed. She is startled to see Gray grinning down at her from a very high branch as she glances up the tree. He caught her in the act, so when she sees him, she's shocked, and his grin instantly appears. Before she can even attempt to reprimand him, he leaps down from the tree and stops her in her tracks. She asks him why he is here at all, believing that he should be on his way to the academy by now. She told him that the troops from the royal capital will take care of the ogre nests, so Gray tells her that he should be the one asking the question. Naturally, Syria immediately makes an excuse, saying that she chose to manage the ogre nests alone because the men in the capital indicated they couldn't attend due to an emergency there. Ultimately, she thinks she can handle the matter flawlessly on her own. Syria grins as she says this, asserting that she is already aware of the nest's strength. Thanks to the scout's report, she discloses that the nest's leader is an elite ogre, and that, based on the reports she received, there are between 40 and 50 monsters in the nest overall. Even though the dojo master acknowledges that dealing with that many minions will be challenging, she is still sure she can defeat them on her own. Gray perches on the strength of an elite ogre, and after hearing what she has to say, his mind starts to work. It turns out that the ogre's true strength is its brains and leadership, whereas the monster itself isn't so strong. Our lad decides that it would be suicidal to even attempt to battle the creatures by himself, given the possibility of being encircled. He is certain that 𝐿 will not survive if he permits her to embark on this journey by alone, since he has experienced this exact incident before and knows how it unfolds. Furthermore, he cannot allow the town to be destroyed by the same creatures if she dies, especially when he has been given another opportunity to make a difference. After giving it some thought, the hero requests his master to take him with her, without even considering it, because he has saw that awful future firsthand, and it is still very fresh in his mind. 𝐿 rejects it with a shake of her head, claiming she can manage it on her own. Naturally, 𝗏 wouldn't want to reveal to her that he is from the future, and that he knows she will die. He tries to persuade her otherwise by saying that this might be his first opportunity to get some actual battle experience. It's precisely what he needs to test his training after all. He then reiterates his plea, implying that 𝐿 believes he will just get ready for the operation. She is certain that he is aware that his master does not consider him a liability in combat. She is no longer even capable of defeating him in a simulated conflict. He has gotten that excellent. But she also explains to him that no one can predict what will actually occur in a genuine battle, particularly when a monster's nest, like the one they're facing, has just appeared for a risky mission like this. The dojo instructor thinks he should hold off until he has a little more practice in less dangerous real fights. Since he genuinely believed he was going to convince her otherwise, 𝗏 is now beginning to feel somewhat discouraged. Unfortunately, he is compelled to use his last resort because she insists on going alone. He abruptly tells her that he has an idea, which immediately piques her interest. Then, without warning, he challenges her to a fight. He's apparently going to knock her out cold as part of this plan so he can handle the monster alone. He tells 𝐿 what he plans to do. With his blade aimed directly at her face, as she attempts to comprehend what the devil he just told her, the white-haired master simply smiles. She remains motionless for a few seconds, perhaps hoping he will reconsider his choice, but 𝗏 refuses to back down and keeps the tip of his blade only inches from her face. It's pretty obvious now that she doesn't want to fight him, and that she can't make him leave. She simply closes her eyes and gives up. 𝐿 consents to accompany him, but demands that he swear to her that he would always return alive. As soon as he hears these words, our boy lowers his blade and tells her that he will return from this mission. So begging 𝐿 not to perish in the ogre's nest, he forces her to make him a similar pledge. She is of course quite certain that it won't occur. Once they are in agreement, the hunt is formally started when the student and master follow the blood trail to the ogre's nest. They soon come near a valley and observe from a distance that there is no way out of the area. They can easily become trapped and killed if they enter. 𝐿, however, is more worried about the creatures that are inside. According to her, the minions are quite self-assured and give it their all in this type of setting. 𝗏 promptly informs her that they will also be unable to flee. He thinks his master is becoming a bit arrogant. Therefore, he also emphasizes that they are facing more than just stupid creatures. They are facing intelligent monsters. 𝐿 concurs with him when he says that they should be more cautious in their approach. The two stealthily look around the tent from behind a large boulder. They search about for a while, but they are still unable to identify the boss. According to 𝐿, it's most likely in one of the tents. That's good, in her opinion, because they can at least swiftly eliminate some of the minions and lower the number before the boss appears. In light of this, she instructs 𝗏 to eliminate the adversary on one side, while she launches an attack on the other. The monsters are still going about their business, as they are still unaware that they are going to be ambushed. 𝗏 and 𝐿 pull out their weapons and go to work. The white-haired swordmaster approaches the first unalived monster, but before he can respond, she slashes his head off with a single blow. The others are alerted by this initial onslaught, thus their aspirations to be covert are immediately shattered. The two swordsmen are roared at by the swarm of red-eyed ogres, but our boy is obviously superior to them. Like a heartless butcher, 𝗏 effortlessly cuts through the demons without even using his evil abilities. His owner finds it very easy to eliminate all the monsters on her side, and he uses lightning-fast strikes to dismember the ogres. In a few minutes, the nest is strewn with bleeding ogre corpses. The first wave is easily eliminated by the two, and 𝐿 is rather impressed with 𝗏's abilities. She is taken aback by his skill, and starts to question whether this is actually his first time on a battlefield. As she teases him, the dojo instructor is so enthralled that she nearly becomes sidetracked. This is only the beginning of the fight, though, as our boy tells her to remain vigilant because he is currently locked in. 𝗏 begins to feel uneasy as he looks at the dead ogres that are strewn around. He thinks it strange that the monsters were so feeble because the previous battle was far too simple. It's puzzling since he is certain that Syria, even if she had been by herself, could have eliminated them with equal ease. She was slain in this exact nest in the original story, thus it doesn't make sense. Gray now understands that there must be something truly dreadful within the tent. A frightening pair of eyes look at him from the shadows as he peeks into the dark tent as the notion occurs. Without even considering it, Gray yells for them to leave the place immediately after his eyes widen in terror and shivers go down his spine. Our boy informs his master that they must depart right away, asking her to join him in fleeing. However, the arrogant swordmaster believes he is overstating things. Feeling that there's no reason to back down, she asks him what's wrong. However, she doesn't hesitate to chase after him after noticing the horrified expression on his face. Both of them are now fleeing the nest as swiftly as their legs would allow, but their efforts are quickly in vain as someone suddenly appears to jump into the air directly above them in order to catch them. Our child gets even more alarmed when the green-skinned thing blocks their way and lands directly in front of them. Syria, however, is ecstatic because she believes she is finally going to have the opportunity to take on the top ogre. With a hefty helm and a huge axe that can cut down trees with a single blow, this ogre is far bigger than the feeble minions they exterminated some time ago. Instead of being afraid, the dojo teacher talks endlessly about how honored she is that the boss visited them. In a startling turn, Gray is the one who informs her that this enormous beast on steroids isn't even in charge. As it happens, the behemoth in front of them is not even close to the true boss's power. When Syria turns around, he sees the army of 𝗏𝗏𝗏s racing at them, with the true boss standing at the rear and using his body to generate a tremendous surge of force. The white-haired swordmaster experiences fear for the first time, and before she can even understand it all, a swarm of 𝗏𝗏s brandishing axes surrounds them. Even though she is trapped, the boss's overpowering might keeps her motionless. Gray then tells that they are facing something far more powerful than the elite ogre. They are currently dealing with a general ogre, and the vicious green monster is the owner of the nest they just attacked. At last, Syria gets over her delusions and acknowledges that they cannot defeat an ogre general alone. The reason the entire village was destroyed is now rather obvious. Unfortunately, given that they are currently outnumbered and outgunned, it appears that history is set to repeat itself. Given the severity of the situation, Syria advises them to simply kill the brute in front of them and flee. Without hesitation, in a desperate attempt to swiftly eliminate the helm ogre, she swings her sword at him. However, the man is also not a softie. Syria is surprised when he blocks the initial blows, but she tries again and manages to hit his shoulder. Unfortunately, her enthusiasm is short-lived, as she observes the wound healing quickly before her very eyes, as if this man weren't already tough enough. He is also capable of regeneration. Syria concludes that there is no need in fighting after seeing this, but Gray clarifies the situation. It seems that the Ogre General's roar increases his warrior's strength and recuperation capacity. This explains why the minions seem oddly stronger than usual. Syria is having trouble fending off the big guy. Our son is perplexed as to why he hasn't been able to beat any of the ogres in this second wave. He strikes repeatedly, but they simply bounce back right away. He abruptly makes the decision to leave Syria, requesting that she simply buy him some time. Since she has just been battling one ogre, it will obviously be extremely difficult. She becomes rather worried when he states this. When she asks him what he intends to do, he responds that there is only one thing they can do to survive this ordeal. Having said so, Gray discloses his fatal scheme to pursue the Ogre General. Our boy chooses to pursue the elite ruler of the nest because he is aware that this is the source of their power. His frustration only grows as he hacks his way through the sea of ogres, but they keep returning to try to flank him. He only needs to concentrate on eliminating every enemy in front of him at this time because he has his sights set on the objective, to make room for him. Unfortunately, that's precisely when he encounters an ogre who uses a large axe to break his sword. When this occurs, Gray is stunned and looks at the small fragment of his blade for a while. This is a really negative sign because it's now obvious that his sword cannot hold up against a stronger ogre. Since he plans to meet the Ogre General shortly, he promptly returns to the game and avoids a powerful blow in time. He also draws his backup sword while he is still in the air. Although he is fortunate to have one, he is aware that this one will eventually break as well. Although he now possesses two swords, he is aware that this is still insufficient to defeat all of his adversaries. But because it's all he has and all he needs to do now is eliminate the general and the ogres in his path, he's determined to make it matter. This newfound optimism propels our youngster like a lightning bolt through the sea of orges in his path. Some of them don't even notice him approaching because he moves so quickly, but he takes a couple blows and even gets stabbed in the face. This doesn't stop him, though. As he relentlessly advances through the mass of ruthless beasts, to bolster his troops even more, the general belts out another thunderous roar as he sees the hero approaching. Our child didn't even believe these ogres could get any stronger, therefore he didn't anticipate this turn of events. Unfortunately, they quickly change, making the battle much more challenging. He can no longer continue to press through, and if things continue this way, he and his swords will eventually be crushed. Gray acknowledges that the boss is indeed very smart, after realizing that the general saw through his scheme. Now it's clear that the boss's high level of intelligence isn't a facade. Our youngster keeps struggling in the fight and nearly gets crushed, but he quickly moves aside and regains his balance. He chooses to alter his strategy and put some distance between himself and the beasts. He tries to flee past these minions without engaging in combat because he no longer has the time or strength to cope with them. However, this strategy is swiftly foiled when he is abruptly tackled like an NFL linebacker by one of the ogres. The creature won't let go, and the hero is abruptly immobilized. As if that weren't enough, a larger ogre appears and splits him in two with a huge axe. Fortunately, he can protect himself from the initial blow by using his tackler as a shield, but he must then defend himself from the force of the following blows. Gray blocks the attacks with his sword, before his next course of action ever occurs to him. He is launched into the air by the beast's subsequent crushing blow. When he looks at his hand, he discovers another broken sword, after taking a direct hit this time that causes him to cough up blood. Now that he has used up his last weapon, our lad is in a very precarious situation. Despite being severely wounded and worn out, he must still face the horde as the overpowered general gives them new vitality every 5 minutes. Gray fights to stand again in order to confront the ogres who are now rushing toward him. But now that he needs to devise a strategy to save himself, his mind is racing even more. He is certain that he cannot prevail in this battle based on his expertise as a foot soldier, and because of that, he chooses to give his life. While they are concentrating on him, he abruptly yells for her to flee, but when she hears it, she simply smiles. She informs him right away that she is unable to accomplish that, and not just because the large, helmed powerhouse is still in her path. When he hears this, Gray tries to chastise her, wondering whether she's trying to die. He fears she wants to die for no reason other than to be courageous. He tells her that once she starts moving, he will run immediately behind her. But she's scared about him, so she's not even saying no. Because of a terrible injury on her thigh that makes it hard for her to even stand, Sarah apparently can't even run anymore. When Gray first sees the wound, he is appalled since his master is essentially a sitting duck. In such condition, saving her by giving his life suddenly becomes impossible, and he is left with no other choice. Gray's life starts to unfold in front of him. He was transported back in time to battle the Liquidator, exactly as they had done in his former existence. He finds it somewhat depressing to know that his fresh existence would come to an end in a dirty ogre's nest in just 8 months. When another strong blow breaks his remaining sword, his odds of surviving are severely reduced. Even though the odds are stacked against our hero, he refuses to concede defeat, even though things are starting to look rather grim for him. He has one final trump card under his sleeve, so Gray thinks it's not quite over yet. Even though he is unsure about how to wield his dark power, our youngster is confident that if he can simply summon the strength from the fight against the Liquidator, he will defeat all of his opponents. Therefore, Gray makes himself recall how he felt when he first used that power, because it is his only chance to live. Our hero closes his eyes to concentrate so he can recall the feeling from that moment, but he doesn't have much time to do this because the red-eyed ogres are rushing at him. He points his shattered sword at the adversaries while he does this, wishing that the evil power would quickly turn it into a lethal weapon. Just as the creatures are about to bash him, our boy succeeds in activating the power just in time. With the help of the dark power, his broken blade comes to life, enabling him to permanently annihilate the ogres in front of him. When Syria sees this, she is really stunned, and already rather concerned. But before she can panic, Gray turns to face her, the dark energy consuming half of his face. He then grins and reassures her that everything is well. We can understand why our boy is serious. He just claimed that Gray's ability to nonchalantly destroy the army of ogres in front of him is due to the fact that he is now far more powerful than he was only a short while ago. Even though the general begins to sustain some damage as well, she realizes that these blows are so powerful that the ogres are unable to recover from them, which shocks her. For a moment, she becomes preoccupied. Her opponent has the opportunity to ambush her in that little moment, but she anticipates it and blocks it. When 𝐷𝐸𝐴 blocks the enormous axe with her sword, she realizes that the power behind it is less than it was previously. Suddenly, 𝐷𝐸𝐴 is able to easily defeat the strongest ogre. Thus, she seizes the opportunity and quickly eliminates the brute. He certainly treated her badly earlier, but he is nothing without the general's support. Later, amid the bodies of monsters, we see the hero and his master standing triumphantly in the nest. The bruises on his face attest to the difficulty of their escape, and he is astonished that they survived at all. The swordmaster tells him that although he is sorry for shattering her sword, he literally saved her life, so he doesn't mind. In any case, he returns the broken sword to her, and she accepts it from him despite the fact that she isn't particularly concerned about it right now. She tries to question him about the attack as she removes it from his hands. He used to prevail in battle. However, our kid falls to the ground head first before she can finish speaking. She is completely appalled as the hero faints in a moment, so she begins. We observe that our boy's consciousness is genuinely elsewhere while she tries to wake him up. He is standing in a pitch-black, deserted area with shallow water. He thinks it odd that there is a massive door in the center of the space that is chained, and as he's still trying to figure out what the hell is happening, strange energy bursts out the door, accompanied by enigmatic symbols. He initially doesn't comprehend what's happening, but he soon learns that it's the same power that activated on the battlefield. The dark clouds leak out via a line that forms in the center of the door, resembling a miniature gateway. This makes Gray question whether he will be able to obtain that power by unlocking the door. There's only one way to know, of course. He decides to go toward the door after making up his mind. He approaches, but after just a few feet, he is dragged back by a powerful and menacing force. Gray is horrified as the enormous red skeleton ghost uses crushing power to draw him away from the door. After that stifling experience, our youngster knows that opening the door will undoubtedly result in his death. A loud voice tells him that he made a smart decision practically instantly after he says this, and chills go down his spine in his current state. Gray is shocked to hear the voice, as you may guess, but he isn't given any opportunity to decipher anything. Otherwise, he wakes up like a person who has just experienced a nightmare, and the next moment he is in bed, gasping for air. 𝐷𝐸𝐴 is therefore quite worried about him. When she notices that he's finally awake, 𝐷𝐸𝐴, who is fortunately in the room, comes to check on him. The injury they sustained in the ogre's nest is obviously still bothering her. Our son, who is rather perplexed at the moment, asks where he is, and she tells him that he has been unconscious for 5 days. She even feared that he might no longer wake up as a result. The fact that our boy has been sleeping for the past 5 days still surprises him a lot. He therefore assumes that it's because he must have exerted himself quite a bit. Even while she believes he did much more than push himself very hard, the swordmaster agrees with him that it obviously had a toll on his body. In any case, she is worried about his health. She asks him if he can move, unsure of his physical condition, and since he knows the answer, he chooses to try. Unfortunately, Gray discovers all of a sudden that he is completely immobile with his right arm. He lacks strength in it, and although he is aware that he can move somewhat, he fears that he may not be able to wield a sword with it. To make matters worse, he also sees a strange bruise with dark energy spreading on his bandaged arm. 𝐷𝐸𝐴 questions him about it after noticing that he's having trouble with it. Gray is a little taken aback by this since it implies that she won't be able to see the dark bruise on his arm that resembles a tattoo. Given this, he merely acknowledges that he is unable to exert any force on his dominant arm. It seems like the swordmaster isn't genuinely shocked to learn this. She knows it won't return to normal anytime soon because it's just how she expected. Ultimately, every bone in his right arm is broken. Given that it doesn't even appear to be heard from the outside, it is obvious that the hero was unaware of this. After he clarifies this, she informs him that a magic potion has already been used to treat it. Our boy doesn't like the sound of that at all for some reason. The last time he checked, such items were very costly, so he looks at the empty potion bottle in shock and panic. His master, however, reassures him that the village head donated it to them, so he shouldn't be concerned. This news shocks him. Moreover, he finds it incomprehensible that the chief would provide a potion to someone like him. She is perplexed that he would say such a thing when he says this. She then explains to him that he is actually the local hero. Naturally, he finds this completely incomprehensible and simply looks at her with amusement. What she just said is still registering in his mind. He instantly jumps out of bed to greet the village leader as he hears a loud voice calling for him inside the chamber. With trepidation, he begins to thank the guy for the miraculous elixir, but the chief interrupts, saying that they should be the ones to express gratitude. He assisted them in eliminating the same unscratchable monster of freaking ogre general. The forces from the nearby town gathered to battle it even after the gathering. The chief is right when he says that if Gray hadn't killed the monster, the entire community would have been devastated. He then puts the medicine bottle back in his hands and thanks our child once more for his assistance. After all, the town, the inhabitants, and even the potion itself wouldn't be here today if it weren't for him and Syria. In an attempt to appear modest, the hero implies that the chief is exaggerating, but the man asserts that he is aware that he is simply stating the facts. After hearing these remarks and observing the expression in the man's eyes, Gray concludes that the chief is most likely correct. This settlement was meant to have been devastated by the ogre's attack before he was sent back in time. Indeed, they wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for him. When the chief notices how perplexed Gray appears, he offers to give him a thorough explanation of what he has done in case he is still unaware of its importance. After that, he asks our child if he intends to sit for the World Union Academy entrance exam. As it happens, our son had completely forgotten the one thing that had motivated him to practice diligently for the previous 8 months. The chief understands how much he has messed up, so when he brings it up, it's like a dagger to the heart. A little more than a week before the admission exam, he pursued the ogres. Additionally, he has only 2 days left before the big exam because he has been sleeping in this infirmary for the last 5 days. Walking there is no longer an option, because it takes 3 days to go to the World Union Academy alone. He could ride a horse there in a day, but he lacks the necessary funds, so he musters the bravery to approach the chief for a horse loan so he can travel. Unexpectedly, the man had already prepared the nicest horse in the entire hamlet for Gray because he knew he would make this request. The chief thinks that with the legs on that horse, our boy should be able to reach the academy quickly. Syria tells the hero that even if he hadn't woken up today, they would have brought him to the exam in his sleep while the man is busy boasting about his pet. Our boy eventually has the strength to stand. He then makes his way to the door, and a large group of peasants welcomes him outside, thanking him and wishing him luck on his tests. While the majority of them are displaying posters, one man approaches him and presents him with a sack as a token of appreciation for saving the hamlet. When Gray asks what it is, the man says that the entire community helped him out. They apparently banded together to gather the money for him, after learning that applying to the World Union Academy is very expensive. The fact that everyone helped the cause shocks our boy, but the emotion is soon replaced with happiness and thankfulness as he expresses gratitude for their generosity. It will soon be time for him to start working. Thus he bids farewell. Sarah is with him as he gets ready to go, and he acknowledges that after everything the community has done for him, it will be very difficult to return here if he fails the test. However, his lord tells him that he should not be concerned about that. From her perspective, none of the other candidates at the World Union Academy could defeat an ogre. Although Gray is aware that she is most likely correct in that regard, he is nonetheless worried about his injured right arm. Syria merely asks if his left arm is doing okay after hearing this, and he replies that it is. He believes that the entrance exam may be more difficult than they anticipate, but she also doesn't think he needs to harness that frightening power inside of him. He finds it a little unrealistic to think he can pass with just one arm, but Syria reassures him that everything will work out since she believes the Academy's examiners won't be so naive as to ignore his ability. She can assure him that he will undoubtedly pass the test if she can. Now that our lad has mounted his horse and is prepared to leave, he thanks her once again for the motivational speech and feels a lot better, more assured. Suddenly, our hero embarks on his adventure to start the next phase of his new life. Although this community was destroyed in the previous universe, he is aware that the adversary of humanity still remains here. But he also understands that this universe is different from the previous one, since he now has the ability to alter the future. As soon as our boy reaches the capital, he thanks the lovely horse that brought him there. Even though he hasn't been in the city long, he has already recognized the World Union Academy, an incredible building. There are a ton of possible applications here, even if it is very costly to apply. Every individual in the World Union Academy, which is a sea of people, aspires to be a hero. They are told over the speaker that exam ticket distribution would start soon. All applicants are asked to stay inside the center arena until the process is finished. Some individuals in the crowd begin discussing how competitive this academy is. It seems that only 20 of the thousands of people in this arena will be admitted to the World Union Academy. The rumor is circulating, and our child silently hears the men who are spreading it. However, there were rumors that the number of pupils admitted fluctuated every year. In certain years, up to 50 candidates are accepted, while in other years, only one individual is accepted at that point. Professor Ariel is asked to speak to the candidates. The red-haired woman wearing a manli then shows up on the platform. With a quick snap of her fingers, she distributes the exam tickets to everyone in the arena almost immediately. The documents suddenly materialize in front of every candidate. Our youngster, like everyone else present, is quite impressed when the ticket materializes from a flash of flames directly in front of him. He picks up the paper, reads it, and finds out that his candidate number is 513. He also finds out that he will be attending the fencing course. Everybody has a ticket, and our boy will need to sit for the test. For most people, that means their dominant arms bones must remain intact. Although Professor Aries acknowledges that some of them may be taken aback by the exam structure, she reassures them that this is the way it is. The World Union Academy does not discriminate on the basis of age, gender, nationality, status, or any other factor, she continues each year. Here, not even their names mean anything. The professor clarifies this for the applicants by saying that their names would only be requested of those who pass the test and are granted permission to cross the bridge. Our child, meantime, is still perplexed as to why he is enrolled in the fencing course, given that he actually forgot his sword at the conclusion. He doesn't understand the nature of this system. He's quite fixated with it. The professor discloses that she chose their courses based on appearance while he is busy racking his brain. She then invites those who believes he was mistaken to raise their hands. Since there are literally thousands of courses, many of the students find it hard to believe that she chose theirs based only on their appearance. It's quite obvious that the woman got their courses straight based on their responses and the absence of hands raised. Even nevertheless, a lot of people think that there is wrongdoing. She either utilized magic to read their minds or the academy checked them beforehand. Professor Ariel says she'll be announcing their exam schedules after making sure she didn't miss anyone's class. He therefore requested that they check their tickets for the upcoming update. Naturally, every applicant including Gray Lee checks their tickets and discovers that his exam is scheduled for the first day at 11:00 a.m. He was expecting for a little more time to heal his arm, so you can guess that he isn't very thrilled to find that he's up on the first day. Unfortunately, that isn't true. The instructor continues to increase the strain by declaring that this is a one-time practical test. Late entrants will be automatically disqualified, so she makes this known to them and advises them to be on time. Additionally, she informs them that personal requests for timetable modifications are not accommodated by the institution. Gray silently checks to see if his arm has improved during the announcements, but regrettably, he is still unable to give it any strength. All he can do now is hope that it gets better by morning, even if it's just a little, because if it doesn't, he'll have to fight with his left arm. Unfortunately, when our hero awakens the following day, he is instantly irritated because his injured arm hasn't even healed. Since there is currently no way to modify the schedule, he is forced to take the exam in that manner. When it's almost his turn, Gray is led to the arena's entrance after getting ready and heading to the test. He attempts to relax while he waits for his turn, telling himself that he shouldn't be so negative about things at the moment. He acknowledges that his left arm is still completely functioning and that he can move his right arm to a certain degree while attempting to think positively. He has an idea while keeping this in mind. Gray comes to the conclusion that he must make the most of his remaining time by observing and preparing for the examiner's movements. According to our boy, he should now research his opponent and look for a chance to attack. We are now able to observe the arena's current application. He should initiate contact, the examiner advises. Thus, like a bull, the beast brandishing the large sword lunges at him. He swings successfully and goes rather quickly, but he misses the examiner by only a few millimeters and hits the floor instead. When he notices the cool examiner standing nonchalantly with his hands behind his back, he is perplexed. Having escaped the assault, the applicant is annoyed that the seasoned teacher casually dodged the hit. In a fit of rage, he launches another assault, this time with a side swing that is even more destructive. However, the examiner renders his strike ineffective once more. The 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is shocked as he uses his sword to prevent the second blow. He then launches his own counterattack to physically knock the man off his feet once he has shocked him. The man is thrown like a tumbleweed by the examiner, and when he stops rolling, he is sitting on his butt with a shattered arm and no sword. When the veteran notices this, he ends the examination and requests that he take his weapon and leave the area. Naturally, our boy saw everything that had just transpired. He now knows without a doubt that he's cooked, and a smile of acceptance appears on his face. He simply enters the arena after the examiner calls his number. Now, all he can think about is taking his L in silence on stage and leaving for home. Because what are his chances if that tough guy couldn't even hit with perfectly decent arms? He instructs Gray to initiate contact, just like he did with the previous guy. Unfortunately, our boy is currently having trouble even holding the sword correctly. He doesn't even believe he has a shot because he can feel the pressure even more now. He's not a quitter, though. Thus, he reminds himself that he still needs to take action. In light of this, he swings his blade at the veteran, and he remembers one of Syria's lessons during that run-up. He recalls her telling him that one's arms alone are insufficient to swing a sword. Instead, she taught him to use his arms to channel the force his complete body produces, and he chooses to do just that now that he recalls. He is aware that he can exert force with his other muscles even if his right arm is immobile. He attempts it and makes a respectable swing. Naturally, the examiner avoids the blow, and Gray isn't surprised because he can't really fight like he used to. No one would ever bother exercising their body if it were difficult to swing a sword without arm strength. In order to improve his focus, he swallows it and pushes the excuses deep below. Despite being essentially disabled, Gray swiftly coerces the teacher into attacking him, but then he senses something odd. The examiner's sword stroke now appears to be much slower than it was previously. The only difference is the enormous force that results from those seemingly slow attacks, but otherwise it's exactly like what happened with 𝗪𝗲𝗪. Gray can still see, though, that this man's quickness and technique are far less than those of his masters. In light of this, he believes that if he can just continue using the swordsmanship he acquired from her, he might be able to compensate for the disparity in arm strength. Because of this, our boy transforms into a beast. In a flash, the examiner is forced back more quickly than he would have thought after he unleashes a barrage of sword strokes on him. While attempting to block the hits, he causes the instructor to stumble a lot, nearly losing his balance. In addition, Gray still thinks the man is moving very slowly. He is now beginning to believe that this examiner is not quite as powerful as he initially believed. He recalls Syria telling him that he would pass, and his thoughts replay her words at that same time. He is now much more certain that he can succeed because of the manner he is controlling the examiner. Our kid, Gray, feels much more confident than he did before entering the arena and begins to gain the upper hand in the combat, but the examiner doesn't want to lose to an applicant that simply. Thus he escalates the attack and starts using more force. Our boy is able to block all of the instructor's several slashes. It is now evident that the disparity in power is excessive. The examiner is stronger than Gray, and he cannot break his form even though he has already seen through his opponent's swordplay. He gets a chance to attack after deflecting the majority of the blows. Therefore, he thrusts his sword firmly, but the instructor quickly deflects it. At this time, our lad realizes that the man is moving more roughly, so he devises a strategy that might help him win the battle. Although it's a little dangerous, he believes that if he tries it at the right moment, it can be the move that gives him the advantage over his opponent. In light of this, the hero decides to take action. By becoming more defensive, he entices the instructor to fire strong moves at him, leaving the man open to a counterattack. Gray's strategy worked, and he smiles as soon as he sees this opportunity. After all, nothing is more likely to reveal an opportunity in a duel like this than a large, predictable swing. The teacher loses his equilibrium as the hero strikes for the final blow with lightning speed. When Gray takes advantage of his error, the examiner struggles back in shock. Before he can recover, our boy strikes again, intent on closing the transaction. The odds are now on his side. Despite his weakness and lack of experience, he is certain that if he can merely support his opponent, he will prevail regardless of the size of the power differential. Gray takes a risky swing to win, but he is told to stop by a loud, authoritative voice. So he stops his attack in the middle. He glances up at the official, somewhat perplexed, wondering if the match is already done because it seems a little early to end it now. As it happens, the exam's limit has been surpassed, and the duel that was on show will result in a draw. Our youngster simply looks at the official in disbelief upon hearing this. Despite being so close to winning, he was unable to complete it in time. He sighs in defeat, regretting that he was unable to make it. It's heartbreaking, result for our boy, who has put in a lot of training to reach this stage. However, he is aware that it would be futile for him to argue or resist. So, thinking he's truly given it his all, he stealthily leaves the stadium. Naturally, accepting such a loss is difficult, particularly when it affects his future. He feels that things will be challenging for him because he was unable to even win the first examiner. Since he failed to pass his examiner, he now has no possibility of being accepted into the school this year, so his future appears to be somewhat grim. He therefore makes the decision to retake the test the following year, because by then his arm would have healed. In light of this, he merely expresses gratitude to the academy and examiners for allowing him to apply. A week later, the last round-table meeting to select the students who would be admitted to the best university in the world is about to take place. The location of the conference is room 53. After everyone has taken their seats, the chairman asks them what they think of the applicants now that the test is over. The first examiner acknowledges right away that selecting just a small number of kids is quite difficult. However, another claims that the existing approach, which involves everyone watching together, is not that effective. He recommends that they split the task the next year as a result. At first, it seems like a fine idea, but a different professor disagrees. In order to make things easy for themselves, the man maintains that they cannot afford to ignore a talent. At this point, the meeting's oldest man reminds everyone that he was interested in their opinions about the students, not the exam system. Having stated so, he chooses to begin with the swordsmanship course, and requests that his instructors inform him of the candidates who passed in this particular area. As per its regulations, individuals who outperformed the examiners were guaranteed to pass, but those who failed to do so would be evaluated on their performance and perseverance, within the allotted 15 minutes. After explaining this, one of the examiners asks the instructors of the swordsmanship courses what they think. Since every match was videotaped, they may review and evaluate the contenders' performances, excluding those who defeated the examiner. Particularly noteworthy were contenders number 5, 217, and 753. Since they wouldn't be able to keep up in class even if the others joined, the man advises that they left it at that. After expressing agreement with this choice, the second professor inquires as to whether anyone has a different viewpoint. None of the examiners has a different opinion. As they prepare to render their final decision, one of the examiners inquires about the opinion of the room regarding applicant number 513. The chairman believes that they have verified the successful candidates for the swordsmanship course. The person is Professor Ariel. She appears to be rather interested in that candidate based on the expression on her face. When she mentions Gray Lee, the other examiners in the room appear to be quite interested. When they discover how good he is, they are astounded and pull out the tape of his match versus his examiner. They believe that if he must rely on setting up traps in order to defeat an examiner, it will be tough for him, even though it appears like he was going to win the fight, which is a positive thing. His argument isn't helped at all by the fact that, although his technique was outstanding, his strength was obviously deficient. That doesn't impress the second guy, who even asserts that Gray was outmatched from the beginning to the end of the fight. Following the opinions of a few of them, the chairman requests a conclusion. In light of this, they conclude that Gray Lee is unworthy and should not be admitted to the academy. When she hears their conclusion, the red-haired woman simply scoffs because she finds it hard to believe that none of them took attention of what she observed. It appears that everyone has chosen to be this blind, even after re-watching the video. Professor Ariel comes to the conclusion that it is a complete waste to have everyone watch together. Our boy is among the candidates who return to the academy the next day to await the results. He waits for the examiners to reveal the successful applicants for the swordsmanship course while holding his ticket. 6 candidates have already passed as of right now, and Gray gets even more nervous when this is revealed. When the 5th candidate is brought upon, his ticket instantly catches fire. After that, the numbers 432, 615, 753, 925, and candidate number 217 are called. Their tickets also catch fire as soon as their numbers are called, putting everyone else in a state of astonishment. Unfortunately, the swordsmanship course at the World Union Academy will only be available to those whose numbers were called. And our boy's heart instantly drops to his stomach upon hearing this revelation. Even though he likely anticipated it given how his exam went, he is nevertheless shocked to learn that he was not chosen. By the end of the day, the chosen applicants are expected to cross the bridge and finish the enrolling process. Naturally, those who pass the test are extremely excited, and their friends are just as thrilled for them. However, a lot of other contenders are still depressed about their circumstances, while other people are having a party. Disappointed that he failed after all, Gray simply looks at his ticket. It's undoubtedly a terrible sensation, particularly in light of what he endured to arrive here. However, there is one final category called the Divine Eye Exceptional Admission, even if it appears that he will be returning home. When our boy hears the announcement, he isn't really interested, as you may expect. He most likely has no idea what that is, but then he hears this number being phoned. This is a huge shock, of course, but what's even more unexpected is how his ticket suddenly begins to flash bright blue. Compared to those who had the flames earlier, it shines even brighter. He is therefore as perplexed as the other contenders who are gazing at him in wonder. The display on display confuses them all, and after a few seconds of staring at the luminous card, The hero begins to realize that he passed. Some of the crowd are very familiar with this Divine Eye special admittance thing because the Academy has really done it before, but the majority of candidates are as confused as our lad. Gray has never heard of it before, so he doesn't comprehend it. Those who are familiar with it help him realize that it's essentially a means for someone to enter the institution through the back door. The name doesn't sound familiar to him at the moment. Everyone knows that, some arrogant, who most likely entered normally and have an opinion on it to them. It's terribly bad that the World Union Academy permitted a privileged admittance. However, our kid is only upset over the fact that he entered through the back door while the jerks are busy complaining about it. Since he has no links here, it is counterintuitive. He therefore questions whether his master managed to get him in. She never said anything like that, so he understands it's a stretch, but it's a chance. Suddenly, an elderly man interrupts his thoughts to chastise the candidates who were making disparaging remarks about the Divine Eye special entrance, and he chooses to educate them after realizing that they have chosen ignorance. He says that for more than a century, heroes have been created through the noble category of divine sight, unique admissions. The jerks reject the old man's attempts to explain things to them. According to them, the only people who enjoy the Divine Eye special admittance are the geezers at the World Union Academy. Furthermore, people who entered by this route were only exceptional in the past, according to their most recent inspection. It appears that Amy White, Bella Albright, Leek Mueller, and Jacob Bloomfield, all of whom are regarded as total failures at the World Union Academy, are recent Divine Eye candidates who have achieved success. Since these are the names of the heroes we saw in the first chapter, you may recognize some of their names. Even the current applicants are aware of these individuals' terrible performance, which has made them the bottom feeders at the World Union Academy for some reason. However, because they were all members of the core group that fought the Liquidator, Gray has very strong memories of Amy, Bella, and Jacob from his previous life. Our son is thrilled to be able to battle with them, despite what everyone else is saying at the moment, since he knows they will emerge as the real heroes. On the day of the entry ceremony, the narrative resumes. Since the ceremony is currently set to start in 30 minutes, the students are urged to gather in the plaza in front of the main office once they have finished getting dressed. We get to see our son in his gorgeous uniform for the first time, with the World Union Academy logo imprinted in his chest pocket. The men at the front begin to quarrel over the proper place after they have been walking for a time. There is nothing here, even though it appears that they should be at the plaza in front of the main office. Thus, people are uncertain if they have arrived at the correct location. One of the instructors stops by to greet them before they may become even more perplexed. He expresses regret for the misunderstanding and explains that a mix-up has caused a slight delay in setup. The kids are still perplexed by this since they don't understand what he means when he talks about setting up. At that moment, the man orders them to take a few steps back so he may install the stairs there. They are even more perplexed by this, but they take a step back and inquire as to whether that is sufficient. Fortunately, it's flawless. The professor with the white hair then starts working. As the man descends to begin writing something on the floor, the students look on in disbelief. They continue to wonder what he might be up to. When a huge, enormous circle emerges on the earth, the pupils are in awe as the golden seal extends out and glows brightly. Then, in an instant, a massive auditorium with a set of stairs connected to it emerges. After apologizing once more for the wait, the man instructs them to take a seat anywhere in the spacious hall. Naturally, the events of the previous moment have left them rather stunned, since they are unable to even understand how he was able to transport something so large. Our son sits down calmly, while the majority of the other freshmen are still somewhat excited about what the professor accomplished. He believes that they most likely took this action in order to get a view of the school building during the entrance ceremony. He thinks it's a rather excessive use of teleportation magic, but it's also a pretty great notion. In both his previous and current lives, he has heard a lot about the organization, but he can now confidently state that he has witnessed the World Union Academy's strength. Because the hall is so large, it's clear that there are far too many seats. Since only 30 students were admitted this year, the purple-haired man at the front points out that he doesn't believe there is a need for thus many seats. But the girl seated beside him tells him that he has no idea what he's talking about. "I never really studied anything other than how to wield the sword," he replies, merely apologizing. The girl chooses to educate him a little in that situation. As the name implies, the World Union Academy brings together the top students from throughout the globe. She explains this to him first. and she announces that the others have arrived by excitedly pointing up at the sky before she has finished speaking. At that moment, everyone else looks up at the sky, where they see enormous dragons and a fleet of airships. Since they have no understanding what the hell is going on, the majority of pupils are horrified when they see this. However, it appears that our son is well aware of what is taking place. He instantly recognizes the mystical airship 𝗏𝗏 when he looks up at the sky. Once, as a member of the Liquidator subjugation team, he had climbed aboard. He is shocked that they are bringing it out for an entry ceremony alone, as they claim it to be one of the biggest airships in the world. As it happens, the World Union Academy seems to do precisely that. The white-haired professor from before says it's time to start the admission ceremony after noticing that everyone has arrived. We catch up with our youngster, who appears to be really bored at the moment, shortly after the Headham's address. After the last few minutes, he agrees that even the World Union Academy's entry ceremony isn't all that different from a typical one, even though he's on the verge of falling asleep. His current boredom will soon change, though, as the greetings from the top students in each subject are the next thing on the agenda. When the best student in the swordsmanship course, Leon Hart, steps up to answer the call, Gray's eyes nearly jump out of his head. Our youngster is now much more engaged in the admission ceremony, and he's not alone. All the other freshmen are ogling Leon Hart. Given that he was the one who quickly defeated the examiner during the admission exam, it makes perfect reason that they fear him so much. The man ascends the platform and extends a courteous greeting to the lecturers. It seems that this man is so skilled with a sword that some people claim he is on par with the teacher. It's rather a big statement, but I suppose that's just how talented 𝐿𝐿𝐼𝐻, who has white hair, is. The hero is now deeply captivated, but his train of thought is cut short. Leon Hart abruptly asks the professors if he is free to speak, and they say that he is. He thanks them and gets ready to make his own brief address. He begins by saying that he has a single grievance that he would like to bring to the academy, but he turns to speak to his fellow students before disclosing what it is. That's what he initially says, but then he makes fun of our boy by saying that he's only speaking to the students who were admitted in the right manner. They express hope that they will all graduate as people who can contribute significantly to the world after Leon Hart informs them what an honor it is to be accepted into the academy. Nevertheless, he exhorts his peers to put in a lot of effort, saying he eagerly awaits the time when they may all strive high as members of the esteemed World Union Academy. Following this little statement, he resumes his subtle attack on our hero by implying that one of them is unworthy of being present. After making this audacious claim, he turns to Professor Ariel, the Divine Eye, and asks her to verify whether or not he is right. The red-haired professor's demeanor shifts from pride to astonishment in an instant. She tries to contradict him, stating that all of the kids here have completed the difficult exam, even though they might not be as strong as he is, because she is completely shocked by the accusations. She makes it apparent to him that keeping the other pupils out is a bad idea. After addressing that, she asks him directly, "Why in the world is he even asking me that?" The tenacious top student now lashes out at her, claiming that he wasn't referring to those who were accepted after successfully completing their tests. He then gives Professor Ariel a direct glance and informs her that he is referring to the student who entered through the back door using her special admission of Heavenly Eye. When he calls her out like this, the red-haired woman simply grins, but he doesn't stop there because he then does, to vociferously call for the person who was granted privileged admission to come forward. This guy even has the audacity to insist that Gray immediately vacate the academy and return his uniform. His boldness astounds everyone seated in the hall. None of them dares to challenge Leonhard, but they all gasp in surprise. Meanwhile, no one comes forward to help him. The target in issue, however, remains seated. He has not yet made himself known since he is attempting to ascertain the origin of this animosity. Although he feels rather anxious, he is happy that Leon Hart is unfamiliar with his face, because that would provide a significant challenge for him. He recalls the moment the top student got up to answer the phone, and he's relieved that the man didn't see him at the time, even though they were so near. Leon Hart decides it would be better to just stay seated since he obviously doesn't know who he is. If he doesn't actually move forward, he might not become involved in this whole situation. With an unconcerned expression on her face, Professor Ariel finally speaks out when the special admittance student declines to do so. After witnessing the audacity of the man in front of her, she implies that this year's kids are quite animated. In an attempt to lighten the situation, she says this, but the obstinate top student only yells at her. He requests that she stop admitting pupils through the back door after making it clear that he takes what he just stated extremely seriously. He's going to say more offensive things. When Professor Ariel eventually loses it, she interrupts him by coming up behind him and then gets ready to demonstrate to him why she is an academy professor. Ariel asks 𝐿eonheart if he believes he is more powerful than the student she selected for special admittance using the divine eye. He is initially taken aback by the question because he is unsure, but he has already created a lot of fuss and it would be foolish to back off now. Consequently, he finds the bravery to declare that he is. He is incensed that she would even pose such a question to him, and questions whether she believes he is weaker than the mystery kid. Professor Ariel smiles even wider with this response, knowing that something exciting is about to happen. She suggests that they place a wager so he may put his money where his mouth is since she appreciates his attitude. She reiterates and clarifies that she truly wants to place a wager, and not just any net, because she is truly willing to risk her job to prove she didn't make a mistake. 𝐿eonheart is once again shocked by the proposal she has presented. Naturally, 𝗓𝗏's unique admission will also be on the line as a result of this wager. Since this was clearly not part of his intentions, our youngster starts to worry a lot. 𝗓𝗏 panics since he has no idea what sort of wager this bold woman is discussing at the moment. 𝐿eonheart assumes that the professor is trying to get him to fight the special admissions student, but she says she would never do such a boring thing. After all, she thinks that if our kid goes all out against 𝐿eonheart, he will die. She assures him that she wouldn't purposefully force them to fight, after stating bluntly that he is no match for the special admission student. Because she cannot endanger her students' lives in her capacity as a teacher, naturally, 𝐿eonheart is the only person she is concerned about. As a result, she clarifies this for him, which naturally makes him furious. When his blood starts to boil and the veins in his head start to protrude, he asks the woman whether she is genuinely attempting to provoke him. Professor Ariel responds by telling him straight out that she meant all she said. Therefore, she recommends that they make their bed about monsters because it would be safer that way. This way, instead of forcing them to fight and run the risk of hurting one another, they can see who is better at killing monsters. Despite making the suggestion, Professor Ariel still gets the best student mad by making fun of him for being more adept at fighting monsters than people. Even though he is furious, he acknowledges that she is genuinely knowledgeable before asking her the precise amount of their wager. Now that they are in agreement, Professor Ariel discloses that the wager's terms are extremely straightforward. They only need to eliminate the demons she chooses to target. The target monster will get more powerful with each round, and the first player to lose loses the wager. Nevertheless, the red-haired woman discloses that if her candidate loses the wager, she will step down from her role as a professor. Naturally, this also implies that the special education kids will be dismissed. Naturally, our boy finds it quite awkward to listen to the woman risk his future, but she was the one who first got him accepted into the academy. She tells 𝐿eonheart that if he loses the bet instead, he will have to follow her instructions. Because it might be a trap, the blonde is a little hesitant to accept these terms. Thus, when the professor inquires as to whether they have an agreement, he requests that she inform him of the target. There will be creatures. Initially, the man tells her that he is convinced he can defeat any opponent, but he is also astute enough to avoid getting sucked into some strange setup. The professor is unable to dispute that. She immediately proposes that an ogre general would be the first target. Although she is aware that it won't be, she asks 𝐿eonheart whether it will be too simple for him after gently suggesting it. All of the nearby pupils, who are also aware of how dangerous an ogre general is, gasp in disbelief when they hear this. At the same time, our son begins to grow a little dubious, since he doesn't understand why, out of all the creatures could have considered, she particularly picked that monster as the first target. The arrogant top student apparently understands the power of an ogre general as well. He thus objects right away, believing that it is unjust of her to select it. After all, they only take into account creatures that can be killed by one person, and from what he understands, an ogre general cannot be destroyed by one person. The professor now reassures him that she is not requesting that he go slay the beast immediately. He isn't strong enough for that, in her opinion. She therefore establishes a time period that spans the whole year. She's giving him till the end of the year to kill a general ogre, in other words. But according to 𝐿eonheart, the challenge is unfair. He believes that no one would even be suffering if someone could defeat a monster of the disaster level by himself after only a year of training. Nevertheless, he insists that she pick a more practical target, and then he suddenly gets an idea. The professor is abruptly accused by 𝐿eonheart of purposefully choosing a monster that no one can defeat in order to leave the wager without a certain winner. Therefore, he clarifies he won't consent to it, he told her. When the woman hears this, she merely laughs and feels sorry for him. Then, She adds a last clause that 𝐕𝐴𝐻𝑎𝑟𝑑 will win the wager if it ends in a tie for any reason. When she says this, the top student is shocked because he definitely didn't anticipate that turn of events. According to the current terms, all special admission pupils will be expelled and Professor Ariel will be immediately sacked if our son is unable to vanquish the ogre general. She is now certain that 𝐕𝐴𝐻𝑎𝑟𝑑 will accept her offer without hesitation. The blonde's expression is bewildered as he looks at her. He accuses her of being insane for even suggesting something that might turn out poorly for her. It seems to him that the result of this wager has already been determined. The red-haired woman assumes that he has dropped his objections. He wants to make sure that the ogre general won't be weakened in any way before placing the wager, and she gives him her word that the monster will be fully capable. After that is resolved, he drafts a contract that 𝐕𝐴𝐻𝑎𝑟𝑑 can sign if he is comfortable with the terms of the wager. To accept the arrangement, the top student swiftly studies the page and signs the document. The lecturer then dismissively leaves as if she had already won. Therefore, he asks her whether she truly believes her candidate can win. They'll all find out soon enough, I suppose. The other academics are astounded by what they just saw, as you may guess. Some believe that Ariel wants to use the bed as a reason to retire, while others wonder what's gotten into her. Since everyone is aware that she is now well past her prime, they believe that this is most likely the case. In the meantime, our boy is unable to suppress his anxiety. Now that the wager is formally in place, he suddenly recalls the moment she decided to extend it till the end of the year, which leads him to understand that the entire pact was predetermined. It seems that the astute elderly woman had 𝐕𝐴𝐻𝑎𝑟𝑑 enamored from the start. She was not going to allow him to decline. After some time, we notice that our youngster is getting ready for his first lesson in the fundamentals of magic. The instructor is aware that some of the students may be taken aback by the lectures on the first day. Therefore, he teaches them that as academy students, no day may be wasted. Having said that, the instructor starts the lesson by going over the most fundamental concepts. This is how magic is used. He explains to them that their bodies contain an unseen force known as ether, which they can control by use of their magical circuits. Gray is glad to hear this because it means he can continue to attend the magic classes for the time being. He already knows the fundamentals because of his time at the boot camp. Unfortunately, when he discovers that he somehow wound up in the same class as 𝐕𝐴𝐻𝑎𝑟𝑑, his tranquility swiftly disappears. All he can do now is hope the man doesn't discover that he is a special admission student at Divine Eyes. Our youngster soon becomes sidetracked during the lesson, and the professor immediately catches him. 5 minutes into the lesson, he chastises Gray for being absent-minded, and this is essentially where our boy's troubles are about to get more difficult. Because he is situated so far back, Gray is surprised that the man could see him preoccupied with just one look. In any case, he apologizes in the hopes of getting things resolved swiftly and avoiding further publicity. The professor, however, has other ideas for him. The man invites Gray to come down and show the class the fundamentals of magic since he is so furious. He reminds the man that they are in the swordsmanship school and don't actually need to be able to use magic because he is so self-assured and desperate to get out of this. In any case, the man maintains that in order to work with a magician, people wielding the sword still need to understand the fundamentals of magic. The man's current speech pattern makes him think of his boot camp days, and he begins to question whether they will be practicing the same spell. He then inquires as to whether the spell he is referring to is the ether bullet. The lecturer is intrigued by this because he didn't anticipate the freshman being aware of it. Fortunately, our boy is likewise capable of using this magic. Thus, he boldly discloses this when the man inquires. After all, his time at the grueling boot camp wasn't wasted. Unfortunately, the professor has the brilliant notion to use a match to show the students how to cast the spell. And guess who our boy faces off against? Yes, exactly. The last person Gray prayed to meet, 𝐕𝐴𝐻𝑎𝑟𝑑, the top student, is now unaware of our boy's identity. Therefore, he greatly undervalues him and implies that it would be unjust to battle him because he received swordsmanship and magic training before even beginning school. The professor, however, maintains that since they will only be employing the ether bullet magic, there is little chance of anyone dying. At least Leon is unaware that he is Ariel's special student, even if it is obvious that there is no way out of this one. Not for long, though, as the old geyser unexpectedly declares Gray the year's Divine Eyes Special Admission Pupil of the Year. Everyone in the class is shocked by the news, as you might expect, with the exception of Leon, who is furious. Even worse is the fact that the teacher didn't accidentally reveal all of this information. Since Lion already dislikes Gray, the ruthless man spilled the tea since he knew how Lion would respond. The top student chooses to play the match much more seriously now that he is aware of who his opponent is. With a wicked gleam in his eyes, he asks 𝗏 to come directly down to the front of the class for their clash, all in the name of properly teaching our youngster the ropes. Now that his cover has been totally exposed, our kid only laughs uneasily. Before long, the two young men are standing opposite one another as the lecturer instructs them. Right now, given that he only attended the boot camp for a few days to study magic, our child is somewhat concerned because he is pretty sure he won't survive this. Leon is naturally the first to attack when the game starts. Willing to demonstrate the disparity in their strength, he quickly fires a respectable ether bullet at 𝗏, and our youngster is compelled to follow suit, but he is instantly astounded by the tremendous assault he unleashes. The enormous ether bullet that 𝗏 effortlessly blasts out astounds the two boys. The top pupil instantly loses all confidence and screams in despair as the magic ball of doom travels toward him because Leon's strike appears to be a tiny pebble in comparison to our boy's blast. Fortunately, Leon is spared when the professor steps in just in time and stops 𝗏's ether bullet with his own power. The man lets out a sigh of relief as he sees his shield block the attack, but then 𝗏's ether bullet suddenly breaks the barrier and sends the classroom into a massive explosion. Even as the dust settles, the professor rushes to check on Leon after the blast sends him flying. The top student tells the teacher that he is all right, even though he is really trembling like a leaf right now. Fortunately, he is unharmed. However, our boy is still attempting to solve the same problem at this time. Given how weak Leon's ether bullet was in comparison to his, he finds it hard to believe they even used the same spell when he recalls the exchange. He questions whether the ether bullet that the subjugation squad members are taught differs from what is taught at the academy. In light of this, he inquisitively asks the professor if he ever used the incorrect spelling. The man tells him, however, that it was unquestionably an ether bullet. He explains to 𝗏, though, that his own was of a completely different quality, and that it was actually super-compressed ether rather than regular ether. Our boy has never heard of that before, as you can imagine. He thus conveys his perplexity. The man acknowledges that even the professors struggle to produce this power. Therefore, it's astounding that 𝗏 was able to create and restructure it into a spell in such a short period of time. The professor continues by saying that no one in the academy is capable of reproducing what 𝗏 just accomplished. As they all discuss how amazing the entire experience is, the students, like the professor, are still in awe of the power they just saw as whispers filled the hall. Some even believe that rather than being admitted specifically, 𝗏 ought to have been enrolled in the magic course from the beginning. Nevertheless, the professor simply clarified, "Our boy feels that something is off somewhere. What he unleashed a few moments ago appears to be identical to every spell that the subjugation squad learned at boot camp. He even recalls that he was among those who lacked the aptitude for it. This seems like the fundamentals to him, and he questions whether the professor is exaggerating because he believes that anyone should be able to accomplish something similar with enough practice." Our boy is taken aback when he hears the man simply burst out laughing. The professor laughs like a crazy person despite his confusion. After he stops laughing, he asks our boy, in an odd way, if he would think about enrolling in the magic course. The old man even offers to vouch for the child if he agrees to transfer, because he is certain that he is more skilled at magic than swordsmanship. Regretfully, 𝗏 promptly dashes his hopes by graciously turning down the offer. Our boy says he was told he's not very good at magic, so he'll have to pass on it. Naturally, the professor finds this response to be completely insane, especially in light of what he just saw with his own eyes. He doesn't even understand how 𝗏, who knows the ether compression technique well enough to create super-compressed ether at such a young age, can sag something like that. He believes that, even by academy standards, the boy is an unmatched prodigy. In his opinion, whoever claimed that 𝗏 lacked magic skills was an idiot, since it was obvious they had no idea what they were talking about. Thus, he asks our boy again if he is certain he does not wish to transfer to the magic course. At this point, 𝗏 just stays silent as the other students discuss how wonderful it is to witness a professor who doesn't often give students praise, bestowing such a high level of appreciation on someone. When the hero doesn't respond, the man tells him straight out that if he doesn't study magic, the world will suffer a great loss. He would even label 𝗏's refusal a crime against magic because he is so invested in it. Even though the professor's expression is deathly serious, our boy somehow bursts out laughing when he hears this. At that moment, he abruptly recalls hearing, during his boot camp experience, he mentioned either compression technique. You see, the best mage to have ever lived in their world taught them back then. She informed them about something known as OD on that devoted day. It is also referred to as life force, but it was previously unknown, making it extremely challenging to perform effective magic. She explained to them that in order to accumulate it, people had to continuously compress it inside their bodies. Even then, they could only use it if the fragments happened to mix with OD. By coincidence, Gray's mind replays this memory. Thus, he asks his current professor right away if he is aware of OD. Since he doesn't know what that is, the question immediately crushes the man. Our boy affirms that he lives in a world where people are still unaware of the existence of OD based on the professor's response. It seems that he was transported back in time to a period when people were ignorant of how to use magic correctly. In light of this, he is now positive that the knowledge he gained in the subjugation squad was future-oriented. As you can imagine, this is a huge deal because it has the potential to alter how magic is used globally, and Gray is aware of this as well. He is aware that he must be cautious about who he discloses it to. When the professor asks him again if Hest will eventually transfer to the magic course, his thoughts are disrupted. For the third time in a row, our boy declines, saying that he simply loves swords too much, despite the enormous discovery he just made. Although he declines the offer, he thanks the man for it. The professor eventually gives up on trying to change his mind at this point. His hope is that Gray will change his mind, though. Therefore, he says that any time is fine for that visit, and invites the special student to come find him if he ever has second thoughts. Once more, the professor eventually lets the hero go back to his seat after the hero thanks the man for his generous offer. He vows to stop bothering Gray if he looks away during class because he is so impressed by the talent in front of him. At this point, the man is genuinely a fan, since he says he doesn't even mind if the boy gets bored and leaves the class. He believes that Gray Lee is simply too simple for this class. As the other students gape at him in wonder, the hero stealthily returns to his seat. They find it hard to believe that Gray's ass is currently being kissed by the infamous Professor Carlos. It appears that the professor isn't the only one who is swooning over the hero, because Leonhard appears to be practically in love with Gray at the moment, as evidenced by the fact that the man is referring to him as Lord. Our boy is now surrounded by the top student acting in this manner, which naturally makes him feel uneasy and sends shivers down his spine. On his way to Professor Ariel's office later that day, Gray gets a note from her asking him to meet up with her after class. He can't help but question why he was called suddenly. He believes Professor Carlos may be to blame. He begins to hope that the woman with the red hair won't suggest that he also change his course. Before long, he stands directly in front of her door and knocks. She lets him in since she already recognizes him. He feels a sneak attack coming from the side just as he is about to apologize for the intrusion. When someone tries to slash him with a sword, his reflexes take over quickly, enabling him to block the blow and take the assailant out. He's shocked that his body reacted on its own, but he can't think about that right now, since he just got attacked. He turns to the assailant, wondering what the hell that was fire. But then, as soon as he sees the girl, he can't help the feelings that he's seen her somewhere before. Gray takes a battle stance after knocking the attacker down, and then, as soon as he takes a closer look, he's stunned because the girl looks very familiar. He's still trying to figure out where he's seen her before. When a voice interrupts his thoughts, the person sounds impressed by what they just saw. Then our boy sees that it's the professor with the red hair when he looks up. Since it's now evident that she didn't make a mistake, the woman is happy to hear that her intuition about the young talent she chose was correct. Two of her co-workers, who are also present, are apprehensive about her special admissions student while she boasts about him. They even imply that Bella, the green-haired girl, didn't attack with any genuine intention, indicating that they don't really like Gray. As such, they feel that Ariel might have even asked her to go easy on the new guy. Bella's movements were perfect, they acknowledge, but to have her sword knocked out of her hand so easily was just unnatural. Our boy listens to them, scold the blue-haired girl, and realizes that she is the famous Belle Albright from his past life. She was one of the heroes from the World Union Academy who fought against the Liquidator and was considered the greatest sorceress in the world. Of course, Professor Ariel is not pleased to hear her colleagues talking to Bella that way, so she snaps at them. The red-haired lady suggests that the both of them consider quitting as professors, since they can't even tell if the girl was holding back or not. She holds out her hand as though she's asking for something. They thus instantly alter their minds upon witnessing her response. As he nervously claims that they were only kidding about what they said, the first guy drops a stack of coins in her hand. Gray looks on in disbelief as this conversation takes place directly in front of him, but then he suddenly understands what's happening. Ariel tells him that they were actually gambling when he inquisitively asks the professors what they're doing. It seems that they wagered on whether Bella's surprise attack could be repelled by our boy. The red-haired woman, as you might expect, bet her money on the hero, and she profited handsomely as a result. She chooses to let him share in the benefits as a result. Telling him that this is his part, she throws one of the coins at him. He initially doesn't understand what she threw at him. His eyes practically pop out of his head when he realizes it's a hold coin. The value of a single gold coin is enormous, so he's quite amazed. Despite their obvious dissatisfaction with the result, the other professors can't shake the feeling that Ariel was correct about Gray. Since it appeared from the previous exchange that he purposefully avoided using his dominant arm, it's exactly as the red-haired woman said. He seemed to be attempting to shield his immobile arm. Thus, they question whether it's due to an injury. Although his colleague is unsure of what to think, this is what the first man has in mind. The first man believes that the cause of this is more likely to be a deeper type of wound than a visible physical injury to the muscles. His colleague concurs after hearing this, saying that a minor injury wouldn't result in that. As the men assess the situation, our boy listens in disbelief, nearly unable to believe what he is hearing. The fact that they can infer that much from him alone astounds him. He thus conveys his astonishment. The men then remind him that if they couldn't tell that much, they wouldn't be academy professors. Although it wouldn't be particularly apparent to most people, Professor Ariel was already aware of his condition at the time of the exam. The red-haired woman has already gotten almost everything she needs from her obnoxious co-workers. She tells them straight out that it's time to go because she's shown them that she was correct about Gray. She notices that they have developed an unexpected interest in the child. She makes it abundantly evident that she will not let him go by reminding them that he is her student. The other professors, however, insist that they will only acknowledge Gray's potential for the time being in order to avoid making it too clear that they want him. However, they warn the hero that if his wound doesn't heal in time, he won't be able to meet the Academy's admission requirements. Before they finally leave the office, the two men advise Gray to remember this. Since he doesn't even know when his injured arm will heal, our boy is somewhat alarmed by what they said, as you can imagine. However, when Professor Ariel sees that he is becoming very nervous, she assists him in distracting himself. She suggests that they start discussing magic now that the annoyances have left, which can only indicate that she has heard about his amazing performance in class. Our hero sits down with Bella Albright and Professor Ariel to have the ostensibly crucial conversation. The redhead discloses that in Professor Carlos's class, she had heard about his use of super-compressed ether. The fact that she already knew doesn't really surprise him, but it's still quite interesting. The seasoned professor responds that Carlos visited her office earlier and even requested that she transfer Gray to the magic course without first talking to him. Naturally, Ariel didn't do that, which is why they are currently sitting here discussing it. In her opinion, Gray is better suited to use the sword than magic, so she turned down Carlos's request. When she says this, the hero is quite taken aback because he actually employs magic that no one else in the world is capable of using. However, Professor Ariel doesn't believe that he appears to be skilled at magic compression for some reason. To her. He doesn't even appear to have practiced it previously. Gray now understands that he is interacting with a professor who is genuinely exceptional. It turns out that she has regained her divine eye, which allowed her to see through the 𝗥𝗏𝗄 in a way that Carlos was unable to. She can tell the truth just by looking at him. He therefore comes to the conclusion that it would be best if he didn't lie to her. In light of this, he coolly takes a sip of his beverage and informs her that she is entirely right. The red-haired woman asks him to explain the trick he's using to trick everyone else, since she's happy to see that he's cooperating. She encourages him to confide in her because she is positive that he is not actually using ether compression magic. She even offers to reward him if he tells her his secret, and she swears not to tell anyone else. Even though she is desperate for answers, they are not for her. Bella's actions are the reason she must. Since Bella is actually the sorcerer who taught him the same magic in his former life, the hero is naturally shocked that she would even say this. He almost calls her the sorceress because he is so shocked, but he quickly avoids the situation. Since he is aware of Bella's exceptional talent, Gray is genuinely astounded. Professor Ariel chooses to clarify the situation since she can see why he is confused. The girl is apparently far from the best at actually using the magic, despite being a genius at theory. The girl is unable to produce super-compressed ether for the same reason that she is unable to use the ether compression technique correctly. As soon as he hears this, Gray recalls what he had heard about Bella Albright being a late bloomer. Although she may have been the most effective sorcerer in his former life, her time at the academy wasn't particularly noteworthy. He now knows why that was the case after listening to what the professor just said. Let's move on. The professor shares what she observed. Based on what she overheard Carlos say when Gray applied the extremely compressed ether, it didn't even appear that he had compressed ether. Therefore, Bella won't need to be sent to Professor Bradley if it is possible to use super compressed ether without actually compressing ether. Gray's mind begins to race as soon as he hears this name. All of a sudden, he recalls Professor Varian Bradley, and it's pretty obvious that the man could be a problem for students based on the horrified expression on his face. Professor Ariel was intrigued by the expression on his face and realized that he was aware of the man. Although it would be nearly impossible to not know him, all in all, he has killed numerous people while conducting innumerable human experiments. Furthermore, tens of thousands of people have died as a result of the magic disasters he has caused. In summary, Professor Varian Bradley is the worst magic criminal in history. Our boy is a little perplexed by Ariel's statement that Bella was sent to the man because he finds it hard to comprehend that the man hasn't been apprehended during this time. Sadly, that's the case, and if Bella can't create super-compressed ether by the end of the year, she'll be sent to him where she will undergo surgery. This information embarrasses Gray, as you can imagine, so he tells the professor right away that it's probably not a good idea. Even though the surgery is being performed under the guise of improving her magic skills, it turns out that Ariel is aware that it is not a good idea. She is completely aware that it is, in fact, human experimentation. Although his actions haven't been made public yet, Professor Ariel is already aware of his dubious practices. However, there are rumors that he is the cause. While some people died, others were left in pieces. The blue-haired girl finds it frightening and dangerous, but she has little choice because she will be expelled by the end of the year if she is unable to use super-compressed ether. Naturally, Professor Ariel is unhappy with the state of affairs and would even rather Bella leave the academy than have that man tamper with her body. Our boy is now genuinely tempted to be honest with them, but the magic he is familiar with is knowledge that does not yet exist. Therefore, telling them could potentially alter the path of history. However, he suddenly recalls what transpired during the battle against the Liquidator, after noticing how terrified Bella is at the moment. He recalls how easily the alien invader defeated humanity's last hope by overwhelming them. In light of this, he makes the snap decision to assist the girl with the blue hair because, in his opinion, the future is a hellhole that needs to be changed. After deciding to teach her how to use super-compressed ether, Gray makes a commitment. As the scene changes, we see that our boy is already in the arena training Bella. He abruptly ends his talk with her, acknowledging that, as they had agreed, he just shared all of his knowledge about magic with her. He advises them to keep what he taught her a secret. Naturally, Ariel plans to keep her word. She even makes a signed magic contract that says that if they break it, they will literally die. He asks them what they think of what he just taught Bella after they've resolved that. The red-haired professor replies that she was astounded to learn about OD on its own. But what he disclosed about magic goes far beyond that. According to Bella, it's succinct but well-structured. She found his lecture to be quite interesting, to the extent that she thought she was attending a magic class from hundreds of years in the future. To put it another way, simply listening to Gray's explanation has undoubtedly added 100 years to the history of magic. Naturally, 10 years from now, our boy won't tell her that he just remixed the lecture she gave him. The red-haired woman acknowledges that she isn't even certain that what Gray said is accurate because she is incapable of making sound judgments. Bella responds that there's a good possibility the theory is right. Nothing he said, after all, goes against the accepted understanding of magic. However, testing it is the fastest way to learn. Feeling that it should work, she writes down a spell and shows it to him. She goes on to show what she thinks is her greatest strength in accordance with that theory if everything he said is accurate. The last time our boy checked, Bella's full strength was reportedly enough to burn down a whole city, so this makes him quite nervous. She was also reportedly unable to adequately control her potent magic output. Using Gray's lessons, the shy young girl raises her staff to cast the spell. And then there's a mind-blowing blast before anyone can even comprehend what's happening. She quickly unleashes the terrifying burst of flames despite our boy's best efforts to stop her from using her power. To shield themselves from the explosion, they all seek cover. But when Gray looks up, he notices something odd. He notices the flames abruptly returning as he looks up at the overwhelming power. To her employees. Our boy now understands that she just saved his life because he would have most likely been dead if she hadn't taken over the power run in that 1 second. The blue-haired girl immediately shows her excitement as all of the flames from the destructive fire return to her staff. She is extremely proud of herself for mastering her power, and when she feels comfortable enough, she summons a huge dragon using the flames. Bella Albright can finally enjoy using magic for the first time since starting the academy, but the moment is brief as she abruptly runs out of ether. She begins to feel extremely lightheaded and immediately passes out. Gray rushes to check on Bella after she collapses face down on the floor. Professor Ariel tells him to just let her rest after he tries to wake her up by calling out to her, explaining that she fell asleep because she ran out of either. Our boy is much more at ease after hearing this, and he simply smiles at Bella with a sense of pride. The professor pauses to marvel at her magic because her spell remains active even after she faints. She found it to be a truly amazing sight, and she is quite impressed by Bella's ability to create magic of that magnitude in such a short period of time. But just then, the half-conscious girl mumbles something about how Gray's theory is. What's really amazing is theory. I wish she had realized it was her own hypothesis. Ariel is eager to inform Bradley that they will no longer require his services, because she can now readily produce super-compressed ether and does not require the surgery. Although the red-haired professor is relieved that Bella doesn't require surgery anymore, she is even more appreciative that the girl's ability to use magic was preserved. Our boy is quite interested in what she's talking about when she says this, so he asks her. At this point, Ariel clarifies that although Bradley's surgery boosts one's magical output, it comes at the cost of control. Although the specifics of the way it operates is a secret. Ariel is certain that one's limiter is broken by force during the surgery. Our boy has never heard of this before, but it also makes perfect sense because he recalls that Bella was unable to control her magic in a past life. Now that she can produce super-compressed ether, Bella doesn't have to endure that anymore because of Gray. Ariel says that since he has fulfilled his end of the bargain, she will now complete hers. First and foremost, she wants to assist in mending his arm and wants to apply a particular kind of magic to it. When our boy hears this, he is obviously shocked, but he doesn't object, so he lets her do what she wants to do. Our boy is rendered speechless when the professor unleashes a blast of magic into his right hand, filling the air. As she tries to heal his hand, he watches in wonder, and when she's finished, she asks him how he feels. As Gray tries to move his fingers, the truth finally comes. He's genuinely amazed that he can actually control his hand. He expresses gratitude to the professor for her recent revelation, that he could be cured by a magical healing potion. The woman simply laughs at this and advises him not to compare her nerve-restoring magic to his ordinary magic concoctions. Although she has faith in her abilities, she wants to know if his hand still moves in the same manner. Therefore, she advises him to try wielding a sword. Since it has been a long time since he used his dominant arm to wield a sword, our boy is more than eager to give this a try. He tries first and is a little taken aback by the result. He tries a few more slashes but is unable to speak. He now tells the professor that his hand isn't moving as smoothly as it once did. Ariel isn't even shocked when he tells her this. Although she is aware that her magic cannot mend the scars on his soul, she had a sneaking suspicion that she might have healed his nerves. When she begins discussing his soul, Gray is a little surprised, so she reassures him that he heard correctly. Although modern magic knowledge hasn't yet demonstrated that a person's soul exists, she thinks it does. After all, her divine eye allows her to see it, and she can see that Gray's soul is gradually getting better even now. As long as he does not overdo it, she tells him, it will heal itself. He asks the professor if he should stop practicing with swords because he is unsure of how to accomplish this. Fortunately, that isn't true. Although Ariel tells him that it's okay for him to work out as usual, she is currently even more interested in learning what kind of swordplay could cause such severe soul damage. When the hero heard this, he simply chuckles uneasily, hoping she won't start posing too many queries. It seems that Ariel knows someone who wields a swordsmanship that moves the blade by using one's soul. However, Gray has no idea who she's referring to. She then identifies it as Amy White. She figures that our boy might know Amy, but he's just stunned because he doesn't get why she's talking about the Sword Saint. He shouldn't even be acquainted with Amy in the current timeline. The professor becomes aware that she might be mistaken when she sees the bewilderment on his face. Although her guess was incorrect, she defended herself by arguing that Gray's swordplay gave her the impression that Amy taught it to him. However, she later acknowledges that he is a little different. She therefore assumes that the instructor he received training from may be somewhat more experienced than Amy, but she's sure that in a few years the girl will be as good as Gray's master. Our boy is simply amazed that the professor was able to think that far in such a short period of time after hearing her many theories. He eventually admits, in any case, that he studied swordsmanship at a dojo in his hometown. Nevertheless, he is aware that he must shift the subject right away because he risks spilling the beans if he lets the discussion go on. In light of this, he queries her about the possibility that swordsmanship could harm a person's soul. The professor responds that this is not possible with standard swordsmanship. First of all, she doesn't think that a common object can take down an ogre general with a single slash, let alone eliminate nearby ogres. Much of this can be explained by the fact that Professor Ariel apparently already knew about his feat. In some way, she discovered his past, and as a result, she has already won the wager she placed earlier. She discloses that some of the remains found at the scene were shown to her. Even the most advanced cleaving magic couldn't have accomplished that, so she thought the sight was magnificent. Professor Ariel then asks him if he used the enigmatic power within him after disclosing that she is aware of it. At this point, the jig is up, but he asks if she can see the power with her eye. She says she can, and she even reveals that she can see the power seeping through the chain door. Gray's mind flashes back to that deadly door, and the response chills him to the bone. It is not something that can be guessed. He is now positive that the woman with the red hair can see it. Although it's not exactly the same, she has seen power like this before, so it's not a novel experience for her. Even though they have a similar vibe, our boy is surprised because he didn't believe that there were others with his level of authority. Professor Ariel acknowledges their existence at this point, but she also says she's not positive they're human. According to what she has heard, the liquidator is the one she is referring to. And when she tells him this, the hero's eyes go wide with fear since he doesn't know why that name is being brought up at this particular moment. Thanks for tuning in.
That's it for this episode. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, feel good and take care.